Hey there, welcome to GSPN's official Milwaukee Bucks season preview. We've got the full squad in attendance. I am Ti Windisch, joined as always by the picturesque Rohan Katti. Rohan, how's it going?
Doing well. As I mentioned on our last pod, super excited about Bucks basketball being back this week.
Me too, as well. Adam McGee here, always repping. Adam, hello, sir. How's it going?
Going well, Ty.
What's that
I
kit
feel
for the YouTube viewers?
underdressed.
What's
I feel
the kit?
underdressed. Well, the kit is not why I feel underdressed. It's a retro Ireland 1990 World Cup kind of tribute thing.
Ooh.
It's nice, but it doesn't go quite as hard as what Rohan's rocking.
Rohan is styling and profiling as always. Speaking of styling, Jordan had to go last because we've been throwing tomatoes at him in the group chat all day. Jordan's on demon time today, so this podcast is going to be something else. How's it going, Mr. Jordan Treske?
I'm doing well. Very looking forward to the start of Buck season.
I think we all are.
That's it.
There we go. To preview it, we are going to go through our Milwaukee Bucks X Factors. This can be literally anything, and we didn't share our list with each other beforehand, so we're all going to share our X Factors and talk about those X Factors, and then we are going to go through our playoff teams in each conference. Spoiler alert, I have no feel for the West, so I think that will be an interesting discussion to be had by all. I think I have a lot more feel for the East, but I also think we'll probably get into some good spirited debates about that, given Rohan and I have fought about the Pistons like 14 times, so if he tries to work the Pistons in here, there's going to be problems. But before all that, if you are a first-time listener or watcher, please.
You beat me to it. I was going to do that.
Do you want to go ahead?
No, go.
Okay, well, subscribe wherever you're watching or listening. Podcast platforms, YouTube, we'd love to have you. We're going to be here thoroughly covering the Milwaukee Bucks and Wisconsin Herd all season long and off season. We're pretty much doing this all the time. So if you're checking in, if you've never been around before, if you checked us out a few times, we'd love to have you on board. You can also join the GSPN Discord, find our other podcasts, including Talk of the Tundra, Cruising for a Bruising. We're not going to talk about those teams right now because it's time to talk about the Bucks. The energy is high and positive, but you can find all that, a bunch more, a Substack, more other things at gspn.info. So with all that out of the way, let's talk X Factors. I'm going to start us off.
Jordan.
No. Sorry, Jordan. I want to start us off because I want to make sure that we are not doing the thing that we joked about on a recent pod, Rohan, where we open with Andre Jackson Jr. or something. No disrespect to him. I'm just going to do an obvious one we can all talk about, and then whatever Jordan has prepared, we can go down that path. But biggest X factor, Giannis and Dame playing together. I put Freaky Time in the title. It's become a divisive nickname after Dame said, what did he say? He has no respect for it, or
he's not invested in it.
He's not invested
not yet. See, that doesn't, people take that as, oh, he hates it. He's just not yet. He's not yet.
Also, they asked him
he's not financially invested. They haven't trademarked it yet.
Maybe we should.
The IPO is low on that one.
I was going to say, Dame is waiting to invest in it in the Bucks stock market, maybe.
Check out
the way Team Giannis snap up trademarks, I don't feel like we can get to that one first. The paperwork is probably filed. Or the Bucks, for that matter.
Can't wait to see what they do with Unseen Freaky Hours or whatever he trademarked.
Hopefully that's getting shelved for some variant of Freaky Time. But clearly this pairing is right what the season is gonna hinge on, whether that's health of both players. Dame missed a lot of time last year in the last two seasons, mostly with that abdominal injury, and also was shut down at the end of last year by the Blazers, according to him. I think corroborated by common sense and knowing how teams operate when they're bad. And then Giannis has missed time over the last several postseasons and regular seasons. So I don't want to talk too much about health because obviously we all just hope that they and everyone around the league stays healthy. But also the on-court mesh on both ends. Milwaukee certainly lost a lot of perimeter defense in making the trade, but should gain a whole lot of offense. The results have been good, if maybe not overwhelming so far in the pairing. Rohan and I talked at length about does it matter who brings the ball up, etc. But clearly, Dame and Giannis are going to have to be outstanding offensively by playoff time for this trade to be worthwhile. And I'll let anyone jump in here, but just want to quickly say, I'm not worried about it at all. To quote Tim Robinson, I just think it's an easy, not easy, but it makes sense that these two would fit together and form a great offensive duo. I think they have the pieces around them. I think it's going to happen, but I think Giannis and Dame is the real place to start this pod. So whoever wants to jump in.
I mean, it's easy to say. Like, obviously, Ty, when you bring this up, this is going to be this storyline for the seasons to come. It's we don't have to rehash all this. One of the biggest acquisitions in franchise history. This has to work. It's not like it should work. It will work. It has to work. There's no other option here if you're the Milwaukee Bucks going forward, because you are relying on this tandem to work in order to keep this like a winning championship level contending organization. And like all this, what is Giannis going to stay? Giannis going to leave, all that fun stuff, which we don't really need to talk about right now. But this is a monumental pairing and it does need to work. And I do agree with you. I think it will work. Obviously in the preseason, there's been like a little bit of some hiccups here and there, like, oh, the offense isn't necessarily flowing as much as we need to. Also should take into account first-year head coach Adrian Griffin with this team. And there's been some issues on the defensive end as well. And again, you can't really take preseason as gospel. You need to actually go out there and play real NBA games, which we, again, are going to see this Thursday, which is just amazing. I do have confidence that this matchup is going to work. I just don't know if it's going to click right away, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. These first few games of the regular season, first few months of the regular season, honestly, doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. Like, you just need to get a good playoff seeding. Obviously, you want home court advantage in the playoffs. I don't think, looking at the landscape of the East, I don't really think that's going to be an issue at all for the Milwaukee Bucks. But in my opinion, I don't think these first few weeks of the regular season, we should really start to panic about it, because I don't think it's going to go particularly seamlessly. There's going to be a lot of flashes here and there. There's going to be moments. I don't think they're going to hit the ground running at all. But I don't really think that matters at all in the grand scheme of things.
Jordan?
To your point, Rohan, David Lillard got traded to Milwaukee not even a month ago. I think there's going to be some obvious growing pains. It's not just the Damian Lillard of it all and what that does for Giannis's usage, Khris's usage by a lesser extent, changing the entire core and how everything is run. Adrian Griffin, he's had his dress rehearsals and now it's time for the real thing. I just think the overall, we all know the overall shift in how things will be, organized, or I guess set up, is how the Bucks will succeed in the long term if they get, where they want to be. That's why, as much as there's going to be a lot of talk about, this has to work as soon as possible. This has to work. It's the NBA. Nothing matters except for this present moment, or otherwise your stars might leave at any time. There's all that loaded into it, but the longer that the patience that we hope, or that I hope the Bucks fans would have to start the year, to know that this is going to be a work in progress. People are playing different roles or playing with different players that they haven't normally played with for the last couple of years. It's the nature of making a move at the time that they did. And again, I think this is better off in the long run, but things just naturally, it's not like how it was when Bud first came here, where it's they're running through everybody, steamrolling through everybody in preseason, and then it carries over into a 7-0 start. I don't see that in this team. I don't frankly want to see that in this team, because I think that sets up for bitter disappointment, which the Bucks have had plenty of over the last couple of years. So I think the better that we get used to knowing that there are going to be growing pains, and how people react or adjust to having roles change, especially someone like Giannis, someone like Dame. That's going to be the biggest storyline of this year. And really, it might not be 1 year. It might not be the first year where it's going to work as the best it ever works. And then whatever, this is built to be a multi-year thing. as much as we want success right away and want it at the highest of levels this year.
Yeah, I mean, even if for the sake of argument, we were to say the team does start 7-0, this is all new. So if that was to happen, then we'll see teams catch on and find some ways to adjust, and then that will be new, and the challenge is going to come. Like they're going to face that. It could be right from the jump in terms of trying to work out how do we go and look like what the Bucks have been in recent years. Or it could be that even if, you get a few nice games and it's like, okay, Dame has a nice game, Giannis has a nice game, and the offense is getting you there, everyone around the league is going to have to adjust to the Bucks too. And maybe that is one way where they might just be able to eke out a slightly better start than I probably expect. But even with that, with a new scheme, with a new coach, you're going to be looking at different obstacles, different challenges every step of the way. Some of them brand new for this team, where it feels like we are going to have, I think, very pronounced ups because of the talent of this team, but I think also some of the kind of down moments could be pretty pronounced as well. And as long as you kind of work your way through all of that and they take the right lessons from it and everyone's healthy and in a good place, knowing what the best version of the team looks like come April, May, June, perfect. That's fine. Like that's really what the regular season is for at this point. I do agree. Like, yeah, you wanna have home court, etc. Honestly, though, if the Bucks were like the 6th seed, but we'd seen they've worked it out at the right time, I'd be like, okay, let's do this. Like, I do think when you look at the talent they've got and you look at what they have on their roster, all the ingredients are there to be the best team in the Eastern Conference. And as we know all too well, all that matters is being the best team in the Eastern Conference when, the score is officially being kept, which is the playoffs. So what happens before that, or even how exactly they get to that point, is not essential to me. When they arrive there, it's like we know what the best version of them is. Everyone knows what they're going to do. They're healthy and they're ready to give it, their best shot at what is, optimal 2023-24 Milwaukee Bucks basketball.
I actually don't know if they're going to start slow. They certainly could. There's kind of, I looked at 2 times of teams adding like just a ton of talent and reshaping. I think the Heatles kind of famously started 9-8. So clearly, I mean, even if a real super team, and they obviously went to 4 straight finals, 1-2 is assembled, it can take a little while. And I think this is probably a much more generous comp. But and I kind of forgot this happened. When the Warriors added KD, they started 20-3 that season. They did start 0-1, so a bit of a slow start, but they got it together pretty quickly from there.
Are you saying this Bucks team is going to be akin to possibly the greatest team of all time, Ty?
I mean, I think it's a fair comp to look at if you look at adding a superstar player to another superstar player.
There is one difference, though.
Yeah, they didn't lose a superstar player. Or star player, I should say.
Oh, yeah. So that was just purely addition. It wasn't like the defense is going backwards because of X. Also, they didn't have a new head coach, so they weren't looking at playing.
They straight up just replaced Harry B with Kevin Durant.
Yeah.
I didn't say it was a direct comparison. They also lost Andrew Bogut, which didn't end up mattering in the 2019 finals. But I digress on that note. I also think you look at the Bucks opening schedule. Their hardest
schedule's friendly. The home stretch to start is nice.
The hardest road team they play until that first Celtics game on November 22, which is obviously going to be circled on everyone's calendar, is either like Toronto, Brooklyn, or Indiana. I mean, they don't go on the road. I mean, that's just been hard to play in Canada generally, but I think not a ton of difficult road games there. I mean, obviously they start with the Sixers, who, I mean, we don't have to do a full thing, but is it better or worse for them if James Harden plays? I don't know at this point. And then they have Heat, they have Hawks, but all these are home games. And then a lot of bad teams as well. Pistons, Bulls, like I said, Raptors already. Two Raptors games in Toronto in the first 2 weeks of November, I think, which is weird. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not directly comparing them to the Heatles or the Kevin Durant Warriors. I do think it's a super team. We don't need to do the whole thing, but I don't know. I feel like the team they built is still going a little underrated in NBA circles. And I think it is going to take that first run, whenever it may come, whether it's begins soon in October, whether it's later in this season, playoffs, whenever it happens, I just truly do think that Dame and Giannis are going to get rolling, and the team is going to look stupidly good, especially with Khris Middleton, Brook Lopez, et cetera, around them. But yeah, I mean, I think the pairing is going to be everything. I think it's going to be really fun to track. I definitely agree with all of you, though, saying even if they do start slow, it shouldn't be a cause for concern. And I've already got a headache at, some folks digging really deep into these 5-possession samples and, they're not using Dame at all. They're not doing this. It's just like we haven't seen enough to really determine. I really don't think we know much about what the Bucks offense is going to look like. I think we know it's not going to be super ball dominant from some of these star players. They're going to use everyone. None of this matters. Giannis signed the extension.
Whoa!
So that's pretty
I was like, look at Jordan's face. Something must have happened.
My goodness.
So
breaking news here, everyone.
Giannis tweeted it first, and I G'd it. Milwaukee, let's get it. Bucks in 6 extended. And I think the three of us saw it. I don't know if Adam even saw that. While Adam was talking, this was put in the Discord. And
I didn't see that.
I think we all just agreed, is this a hack?
Let's wait to talk about it until we see it.
We just got Woj quote tweeting that, saying Giannis has agreed on a 3-year, $186 million contract extension. So that's a pretty big X factor. Doesn't make sense for him financially to do.
Okay, take whatever I said up top, but is Giannis staying, leaving? Just throw that out the window. We can throw that out the window now. It's gone. He just extended again in Milwaukee.
So I believe that
Why?
Guys.
Yeah.
I talked about this. We talked about this when the Dame trade happened. This is what he's gonna leave. He still has the options. It doesn't matter. This is where he wants to be. They have set everything up for it, and it lines up with Dame's. I don't know. Well, I guess we'll see how it gets reworked with his.
I would imagine he opts out of the player option. And it's 3 on top of the 2 guaranteed years remaining.
So that's 2028, right?
It's 5 more seasons. I think that's the max it could be anyway. This is deep in the very niche CBA rules, but at least 5 more guaranteed years. Probably another player option. At least 4+ years of Giannis still on the Bucks, which is everything that matters. We're talking about guaranteed if it's additional 3 seasons. Through Giannis's age 32 year. Will all be guaranteed. We've now gotten into the full prime of Giannis under contract with the Bucks. No, I shouldn't say that. Most of the prime.
Woj is reporting that it includes a player option on the 2027-28 season. So, yeah. Which that again, I believe that would line up with Dame's contract.
Does that also line up with Khris?
And Khris too.
No, it doesn't. Khris comes up earlier. He's only got 3 years.
And the 3rd year is a player option.
Potentially. Khris.
I can't wait for everyone to think Khris got overpaid again when we do this in 2 more years.
I just I know this podcast is getting sidetracked, but Giannis knows when we're obviously
he knows when we're recording. This is amazing.
It's freaky time hours. We're here.
He broke it himself. That's amazing. Yeah. That's the 2nd time he's done that in a row, by the way.
And he can say everything he wants about, not being having input in player transactions. It's clear that whatever is being signaled or being worked behind the scenes, it captures his attention and it makes him want to commit more, even if it's not in his best financial mood to do it.
So let's talk about that. So this was we all had collectively assumed that Giannis was not going to sign this extension.
Yeah,
because it is 3. Yes, he also did say
he said it himself.
He lied to us
2 weeks ago.
Yeah. At media day, he did. Because this is the max he could sign right now. 3 years, $186 million. If he waited until this summer, it was going to be full 5 years, $300+ million contract.
Yeah.
So. Again, he even said it himself. I'm going to wait to sign the big money. Nope. guess not.
I guess
I think there's only the money's big enough, but there's one good reason for him to do this, and I really think only one good reason, and that is doing this. The conversation we've just had about what if they have a slow start? What if the regular season? all of that would then provide a backdrop where, whether it's real or not, that chatter could start up again. That chatter could go on and on and on, become a distraction. He's just killed that. He's taken away what, for me, and I'm sure we'll talk about it when we get back to X Factors, probably in like an hour. One of the big pressures for Adrian Griffin is, you've got these two superstars, and it still would have been that if this goes spectacularly wrong, Giannis isn't locked in yet. I don't think any of us are worried post Dame, but he's not locked in yet, and now he is. So that seemed like one of the only things that could have kind of lingered, that could have reared its head. If this is just a tougher adjustment all around, if things don't kind of work out, maybe he just said, Steve of the season, what's best for us to go and win and do whatever it takes to win this year? This mightn't hurt. And it does make sense from timeline-wise, too, and he might just care more about that at this point. I mean, this is also the factor, as much as he talks about money, he's making a lot of money away from the basketball court. Giannis' salary is not his sole income. This is not like a player who's even a mid-tier NBA player.
I believe it was reported that he makes around $50 million per year in endorsements.
Kyle,
Right.
turn on the TikTok cam. There's a storm brewing in Milwaukee. Why would Mark Lasry sell? Why would that happen? That was the worst Bill Simmons. I don't even care.
You
Bro, I was
usually
like,
do a better Bill Simmons.
made-
I was just saying, you made him a newsie.
Good.
Also, can I point out something hilarious is I'm just scrolling through my timeline and I'm looking through tweets that happened around the same time. The last Bucks tweet happened 4 minutes ago, around when this time dropped. Update, due to an unplanned power outage, we are unable to host tonight's rally stop at Pick and Save. Perfect.
Rip to the rally stop.
Can anybody? Let me just say this. Does anybody think it's a coincidence Terry Stotts leaves?
Oh my goodness.
Giannis extends.
I was gonna say, I guess Giannis and the Bucks overcame the Terry Stotts disaster of 2023.
Yeah. God, oh my God, what could have happened to this Bucks team and Terry stayed?
Dude, I will say, I think he signed this purely to line up with Dame.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Oh, 100%.
But he could have just done that next year. I agree with Adam. I think it is let's take a. He put the pressure on. The Bucks came through, and then he said, "Let's ratchet it down a little bit." Now it's a good faith.
It's a good faith, goodwill gesture more than anything.
I mean, it wasn't a monetary thing, but he also,
even though we're talking about stupid money right now.
Yeah.
Say that, what is it, 3 years,
62 million a year average. Yeah.
And we're like, don't sign that. That's bad.
It's true though. Like, as I go out of focus again.
It is funny. It is funny. It is good to put it in perspective. Hey, I think Giannis deserves all of it and more.
Of course.
The lower amount, the higher amount, whatever. I think, he shouldn't have to. I don't know if Giannis really drinks. I don't think he's ever going to have to buy a beer anywhere in Wisconsin ever again. That's for sure. Whatever else Giannis would want to be consuming. What an awesome thing to happen on the eve of the season. I will say we have more of these. Like, last time the Bucks traded for a star point guard, how'd that year end? Last time Giannis signed an extension before the season, how did that year end? I do think it's just rules. Giannis is just the best. I mean, he meant everything he said. I mean, he couldn't possibly have proven that anymore with how many times now he's come out and said, like, yeah, I don't want to leave. I want to play here forever. I just want them to try. And to do this is like even more than just saying that. It's like literally putting his money where his mouth has been in all these interviews since then. Man.
I agree with that, but I also would say let's not pretend that this was a low bar to get to this point. Like, the Bucks only got Damian Lillard.
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah, of course.
In terms of, there are a very small number of trades that they probably could have got that he's just like, yeah, you know what, that answers my question for this year and the next year and the next year. Let's sign an extension. Like, I do think it being pushed to that extent is what does this. And that's not even something that's easy. Like, we know, we've seen even today as we record this, another article has come out kind of detailing the process. Like, a lot of luck goes into that. This one just came together for the Bucks, as I think you remarked on Ty as well, some looked at a previous deal that could have brought them Bradley Beal that didn't come together.
Yeah.
So they're able to get this one. But it is like, sure, he means everything he says, but he was really ratcheting up the pressure. John Horst has admitted as much as John Horst ever would, and John Horst being like, yeah, it's a tiny factor.
Yeah.
I would take as being like, it's more than a tiny factor. If John Horst will even admit it's any factor, he was probably thinking about it quite a lot. But when you get Damian Lillard, like, that's such a big swing. This may not be smart for him, but it's certainly good news for the Bucks and good news for Bucks fans.
And this is why you do the Damian Lillard trade. I understand, there are limitations or restrictions of what the Bucks can do moving forward, whether it's the CBA, whether the fact that all their picks are tied up in other deals, or This is it. These are the moves. It doesn't matter when he extends and forgoes, better financial planning, again, with stupid money.
Yeah.
That he does something like this that rewards the good faith that the Bucks have had in terms of operating in stealth and trading away a championship member from a couple years ago and Drew Holiday, and doing what they've done to secure Dame. So I just think the ends justify the means.
Yeah.
If it means Giannis extends or whatever, however machination was going to be, but none of us saw this coming. But it at the same time, it's like, well, the Bucks have done everything in their right for his entire career to make sure that he stays where he is.
Yeah.
I do think it also, sorry, Ty.
No, I just think I think it sometimes almost they get docked points for being too aggressive. And I just don't think such a thing can exist when you have this kind of player. And I think when you look at other teams who aren't constant, and you have to make the right, if you swing wrong on Drew, this all falls apart or whatever else, right? You have to make the right aggressive moves. But I do think you can look at some organizations out there, present, past, that have had players of similar caliber to Giannis and not done that for whatever. I mean, again, I think Giannis is clears, but the Blazers with Dame these last 2 years, where they just keep using these lottery picks and shedding salary and all these things. It's a different level, but it's the same idea of if you have a player you truly believe is generational for your franchise, I think you do them a disservice for not going all in. And it's cool in kind of a different way. I remember when the Drew trade happened and then Giannis extended, it's those picks, even if those picks are gone, if Giannis is still going to be around or if he's under contract later.
He's going to be around, all right.
Yeah. Then
a lot of teams are going to be upset at the picks they have from the Bucks that have just turned crap.
Well, that's
part of it.
And I wasn't worried about this, but the idea of Dame's under contract for longer, in his 30s as a point guard, he says he's going to age well. I believe him, but is it going to be a couple years if Giannis does leave, where you have Dame and an older roster? And it's no. We're just never going to have that. It's going to be Dame and Giannis together, which obviously is going to be very good for Dame as he ages and has to do a little less. So I think both of these extensions, outside of just the obvious woohoo, we get to watch Giannis, it also makes you immediately go yeah, those trades were worth it. It doesn't matter. If you get to keep Giannis, I don't care about the picks in 2030. We got Giannis now. They're not going to pick another guy like this.
Yeah. Yep.
I think I'll say, as someone who has been critical of them for being too aggressive, I think they've got better at it. He's got smarter. We've moved on from being too aggressive to get Nikola Mirotic, and since
Grievous
that, Drew Holiday, and I'll leave Grievous Vasquez out of this.
Don't bring that. That's you're gonna.
Listen. It's just it's an open wound still. But Nikola Mirotic, that's when they were in a place which was almost kind of panicked buying, and they'd look at the market, and the Bucks didn't know how to be a contender really at that point, and it's just we've got to get caught up in this frenzy, and we've got to win something from this to give ourselves a chance. It does feel like some lessons were learned from that in terms of how you add around the fringe of your roster. And instead, those big aggressive moves are for, bolstering the top end of your roster. Bring Drew in, then later turning Drew into Damian Lillard. I think the other thing I'd say on this is this news is a major boon for the prospect of Giannis being a Buck for his entire career, beyond the obvious of he's now tied in for a number of years. We now have a pattern of established good faith here where the Bucks can say, okay, twice we've gone and we've made the moves that we needed to extend the relevance of the team and give him every chance to win. And he responded by going and signing the contract. Who knows what situation all of this will see the Bucks in by the time that deal is approaching its end next time around, or how everyone will feel. But if it is that Giannis is still as good as ever, and it's like you got to find a way to build one more title contending team around Giannis for his final few seasons, whether it's John Horst or it's anyone else, they'll know, okay, if I can go and deliver the kind of one move that spells, okay, there's a real team with a real chance, this guy has twice shown that that's enough. I believe in that. I take it that you're making a good faith effort, and here I am, and I'm ready to go. So I think that's a cool part of this too at this point, because as much, again, as Ti, you said, like, he's always kind of said these things. Lots of people say these things. It's just an NBA career is a long, long time for players who are as good as he is and who are lucky in terms of their health. And things will change, and, rough spells can come and bad decisions can be made, and all of a sudden the whole thing can break down. So to already be able to map it out this far down the line for Giannis is exciting. But I do think even beyond that, this is news that I think sets a template for what really could be even his next deal. If the Bucks can just keep this show on the road, keep being good, hopefully get another championship between now and then Giannis could be the lifetime Buck that he originally, as a pretty young and maybe naive NBA player, kind of set out there as what he wanted his career to look like.
Yeah, I mean, I think...
Take that, Windy.
Yeah, I think even 15 years under contract is what he's signed up for now. 5 years plus 10 to go. I mean, how many Bucks legends played for that long with the Bucks?
He's already played more games than anybody else in franchise history.
Yeah, so literally no one then by that measure. I mean, a lot of the most legendary players in franchise history where it was only either they didn't play very long overall, or it was just part of their
7-8 year spells generally. Like, this has not been, and if there was anyone close to it, I'm really, in terms of longevity, I'm trying to think, and I can't come up with anyone off the top of my head.
If you can.
I'm trying to think, is there anyone who just would not have been star level, who's even stuck around a long time? They just haven't had a lot of those kind of guys.
Dan Gadzarich.
In that kind of way, though, like a Nick Collison kind of way, there isn't even, the Bucks haven't had figures like that. Ersan is probably the closest comparison to like a Nick Collison in terms of just this recurring Bucks figure 100%. A lot of games.
Thanasis is trying to stake his claim there.
You have to play games.
That's a minor thing to discuss. But no, it is.
Sorry, Rohan.
One quick thing. I do think, to your point, that they've made better moves. Because of Giannis, their stature in the NBA has also elevated significantly. And I don't know.
Is this a Bucks?
Yeah, this isn't the Bucks that we remember. Certainly that anyone's dads remember. Maybe some who were around, again, 50 years ago. But the NBA wasn't the same then. I mean, it didn't matter as much then if you were viewed as such, because there wasn't stars picking where they wanted to play very often. There were some, I guess Kareem did sort of, but the Bucks weren't there because they lost Kareem instead of gaining a player like that. And I do think, was there ever a point before the last 2 years when a Damian Lillard is like, yeah, I'll go play there? Probably not.
No, and the 2 years is right, because we can give Giannis and we can give Khris and Brook and we can give out credit like that, but it's the fact that they won the championship. Because I still think if the Bucks are the perennial contender, but they're falling short every year, Damian Lillard might feel a little bit differently about going to Milwaukee as opposed to this team's good enough to be in the mix every year. And I have seen them win a championship recently. It's a real thing. That is the game changer. And that's kind of, I guess, the legacy of the title that doesn't become apparent immediately. I don't think we were talking about that part of it. We maybe looked further down the line. But to the point then about deals, it's going and getting PJ Tucker in that moment. PJ Tucker contributes to that. And that becomes a better deal, not just because of the obvious, he helped you to win a championship, but it changes your whole identity in the world of the wider NBA.
Yeah, I mean, everyone who joins the team is all they talk about is a championship. And I think it's much more gravitas to that because a lot of these guys did it. I think otherwise it would just be yeah, it's cool. They want to win. Everyone wants to win. I do think the Bucks culture changed forever that year. PJ, of course, did have a huge role. I'm glad you called that out. Well, That was a fun diversion. That was, in terms of breaking news during the podcast, that's about as good as
these have happened so many times. Despite people saying he wants to leave, it's a Giannis. Aha! Sorry,
Jordan. Do you want to share an X factor? Mostly,
yeah. Let's go.
Amped
Don't get any more of that.
before the Giannis news.
I
So
mean,
this
just
is...
like just to put a bow on this,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
just like just appreciate. Like everyone should just appreciate this. Just appreciate. Like this is a once in a generation, once in a lifetime, maybe multiple lifetimes type of player, type of environment. Appreciate it.
Is there any,
because it doesn't come around.
It's Kobe, it's Duncan, it's Dirk. This is like all that stuff that we talked about.
Giannis.
It's Giannis. He's in that pantheon now.
But even compared to those guys, like, was there ever been a star who ESPN, I'll say it, that they're the worst offenders. ESPN have tried to force out of a market who hasn't left like this before?
No.
I don't think this situation happened before.
I think it did with Duncan, but in a different time where it was never this loud. And Duncan obviously did come very, very close to Magic.
It's
maybe somewhat to Dirk.
Doc's fault,
yeah.
Like, Kobe, obviously it never happened because he was with the Lakers.
He also came close though, too.
He did come close.
But there wasn't a media empire like he's got to get out of there.
Media landscape is different, though.
It is.
Very,
but also,
very.
And the way the NBA is covered is a lot different. But I just think there's
I think the thing about this is that no one understands, like, how the NBA has talked about. This is going to be a side tangent. We're doing this podcast when there are rookie extensions happening today, and Giannis is coincided with this. And today, earlier, there was news about Klay Thompson and the Warriors being far apart on extension talks and stuff like that. And it's warranted. I understand both sides. Klay Thompson winning a bag and the Warriors being like, well, you've had a lot of significant injuries. Don't know if I want to pay someone that's going to be, 34, 35? When you see something like that, it immediately goes, well, he's going to free agency. And it's always just about the next move and next move. When you see all these guys getting rookie extensions, granted, they're more incentive to get bigger bags, but like someone like Jaden McDaniels, a fine NBA player, getting 5 years, $156 million, and the money is just going to go higher and higher and higher. But it doesn't reflect the current landscape of when you're a star and you lose, only one team is left standing. So if your team if it's not that one team, we are going to trade bait you constantly. And it's like, that's just not how it works. The game, the way things are set up incentivizes players to extend. And guess what? More often than not, when they decide they want out, or if it's James Harden and calling Daryl Morey a liar constantly, the fact that he won't play this game, the season opener on Thursday, makes me laugh to no end.
It's up in the air. He's been gone.
It's up in the air,
weeks, but maybe he'll just show up.
But it's like it does. My biggest problem is like how things are presented does not, in no way, shape, or form, reflect the business side of basketball right now. When you see these big name players like Jaylen Brown, another example of like they're going to trade him. He wants to leave. But he signs this huge extension, and Boston is going to be happy with that, even if he doesn't dribble well with his left hand and they fail in the East again. I just think when someone like Giannis, who again has made his commitment, and even when it's been all the talk that happened this summer, even if it lines up with what he said in the past, that is just not how it's perceived. And that is the most frustrating part about the NBA and following the NBA now, because it just gets worse and worse in terms of just like, let's have a 10-minute segment about something that will never happen.
Yeah. Per Woj, this is interesting. This deal gives Antetokounmpo a chance to earn more money over the course of his career with the player option in 27-28. Because of the over 38 rule in the CBA, he can sign a short-term deal again with the Bucks in 2026 and another 4-year extension with the Bucks in 2028. So apparently he's lining up the years to manipulate the over 38 thing. I just personally love that we've gone from where is Giannis going next to here's Giannis's next 2 Bucks extensions coming up.
To Woj tweeting about the next 2 contracts that he's going to sign with the Bucks.
Like got this drawn up. Okay.
It's just a collective. Yeah. Okay. We give up.
Well, I mean, I would imagine he wouldn't. I mean, Woj is not just like figuring this out on the fly.
No, he's
got Bobby Marks to tell him.
No, but Bobby Marks would have tweeted it.
Look at my whiteboard.
He's got
source information. Yeah, that's more exciting than just the possibility. I don't think this gets tweeted if it wasn't the actual consideration here that we didn't realize because we go outside. No offense to Kevin.
We've read a lot of Woj Shams profiles over the last couple of weeks. We know where the bread is buttered. You know?
They're just planning out the next 10 years of Giannis with the Bucks. That's cool.
I saw earlier that Jaden McDaniel, is that his name?
Jaden McDaniels.
Daniels, thank you, Jordan. Is a defensive player of the year candidate. And I checked those odds and he's currently listed at 60-1. So
he is a candidate.
Just be discerning with what you read.
I am also a candidate for defensive player of the year.
Campaign is 40-1, so that's the
that is not real.
That is real.
I saw Bull listed, and at some point, I think memes are involved with some of this now.
No, because Perk said that he's a defensive player of the year candidate or something.
That is a meme.
Yeah.
Kendrick Perkins is a meme.
He moves the money line. What can you say?
Certainly, it seems like a lot of people move money lines these days.
Oh.
Oof.
I can't believe that we're getting Giannis planning out how to spend his 10 years most efficiently with the Bucks.
Yeah.
That's a crazy
after spending another previous 10 years with the Bucks.
He's like, all right, first 10 were good. How can I best spend the next 10 here? Man, what a day. Well, incredible. Jordan, I guess what's your next X factor here?
Terry Stotts.
All right.
Sorry.
No, Jordan, we want the letter X factor, not EX, like as in former factor.
Oh, okay. Sorry. For the listeners, I joked that I wanted to do a reenactment of the shoot around in Oklahoma City, to which everybody on the screen right now was like, we're not doing that.
Because even though on the last pod, Ty and I were like, we're not going to reenact this.
Terry, come back. I'm sorry.
No, I got to spend time with Giannis and Dame talking about offense.
No.
I mean, the obvious. I will talk about a different coach. The actual head coach that wants to be the head coach of the Bucks, not the guy that wanted to supplant him. Adrian Griffin.
Tinfoil hat, Jordan.
Tinfoil hats. Sorry. Adrian Griffin. It's first year head coach. He has 2 stars, a better team on paper in terms of talent, I would say, than when he first got the Bucks job. He's already had his lead assistant leave. Which again makes me laugh. I'm sorry. But there's expectations of taking over for Mike Budenholzer. And I just think it's a different job that he signed up for. I think his life is a lot easier than what it was originally, because I think where the Bucks are at and just getting Dame solves a lot of problems that I feared coming into this year of like, okay, well, you got a new coach, but what is truly different with this team in terms of personnel and the offense and the stuff they have struggled on historically when it matters most. But now having a future Hall of Famer at the point guard position, one of the best players that they've already had at the point guard position, he hasn't played a regular season game with them yet. I am very intrigued by how Adrian Griffin takes this job and how he handles having to coach 2 stars of that magnitude and beyond that, just a supporting cast that I would think fits a lot better with Dame and Giannis at the core of it. But there are a lot of questions it's about development. MarJon is making me very intrigued, but it goes beyond that of finding role players like Pat. I'm already missing Campaign, Jae Crowder,
Bossman,
the kind of Bossman 99, excuse me, the kind of guys that are going to matter in the long run. And it's about the top 8. It's the guys that they drafted Andre Jackson, Chris Livingston. Those are going to be future bets in terms of just building them out for the long term. But I think Adrian Griffin's job has both become easier and a lot harder based on who the Bucks just traded for a month ago and the fact that Giannis extended 5 minutes ago, seemingly, and how he just reacts to a very high pressure job for a first year head coach is, I frankly, just going to be really fascinating, if not infuriating at times if things don't go quite to plan.
I'll go on record as being an Adrian Griffin skeptic because he hasn't done it. Until I see him coach real games, Jordan's muted and I'm relieved because he was going to yell there. He hasn't coached real games, bar maybe one with the Raptors when Nick Nurse wasn't around. And until we see what that looks like over a decent period of time, like I just think it's your first time head coach. You're in a really big spot, which I think, as Jordan rightly kind of paints, is a colossal opportunity, but it also does come with serious pressure. You've got to work it out, whatever it is, and there are more moving pieces. And as much as, the offensive side is kind of simplified, like, the dynamics have changed in a whole bunch of ways here. Like, not to, again, get Jordan worked up, but Terry Stotts did come in to be an offensive assistant. And that was tied into, I guess, this feeling that the Bucks needed that little bit extra to be worked out offensively. Then you get Damian Lillard, so that kind of takes care of a big chunk of your offensive concerns. I do think that also will, maybe train the spotlight a little bit more on Griffin as a defensive first head coach, because some of the things that the Bucks are kind of really going to have to work out a way to hang now is defensively. Like, what is it going to be and how are they going to survive? And it's no longer something that it's like, oh, well, that's not entirely his thing. There's someone else. That's going to fall right in his wheelhouse. So now the offense has to function, which I think we're all confident that will work itself out by way of talent. There will still need to be a clear structure and ideas in place, but there is more work to be done defensively. And I think it's a defense that, as we would have talked about before, needs some fine tuning, needs some work. In preseason, which I will put very, very little stock in, we've seen some signs of that. We have seen signs of a more flexible defense. But how all this works when you're playing real teams and real games, and like, what does Brook Lopez look like out there in the floor in different schemes, and what does that mean for your whole team really, really matters. I will also, again, I don't think this lines up with anyone on this podcast. I will, to the Terry Stotts thing, I do think that's bad. Like, I just think that was really an unsavory, not great thing to lead into this. That Giannis signing an extension is like a gift from the gods to just push that further down the kind of the Bucks news coming into the new season. Because my honest take on that is, I think, as most Bucks fans have been very quick to jump to, which I understand why, it's not a great look for Terry Stotts. It seems very childish. I do think, to be fair to it, it's not great for Adrian Griffin, because that's one of the earliest tests of, you've got different personalities, different experience levels. The dynamics within your staff are different, like the dynamics within your team are going to be different. How do you work all this out? And look, I have zero doubt there's a whole lot of that story we haven't heard. But the fact that there was a blow up as such, like, that is a challenge to a guy who's a first-time head coach. That's his first one. It's by no means fatal. I think, as we had all discussed privately, if there was going to be this tension, if it was going to happen, it is much better that it did happen in preseason rather than carrying into the season and creating a toxic environment and something that then blows up, like, I don't know, near the All-Star break and a lot of your season's gone. But it's not ideal. And I do think, against what is already one of the most high-pressure jobs in the NBA because of the expectations, being a first-year head coach and having that as the lead-in, it does create real question marks around him. Now, he can go and answer them, like, immediately. If they do somehow kind of defy a lot of our expectations and come out of the gate looking great and never really look back from there, and then they look great in the playoffs, there will be zero doubt that he was the right man for the job and that he will be the right man for this job and may deliver many titles to Milwaukee. But we are currently a long way from that. It's very much, this is the blank slate. It's a blank slate kind of coach I think a lot of people wanted, but that comes with uncertainty as we're about to start, and you're in prove-it territory, which that can be good. That can be a great motivator and that could work out. But as someone who maybe leans more one way or another, if you give me a blank slate, I'm leaning a little bit on. I am somewhat concerned because it's easy for us to just kind of write off all of the elements of it, which are uncertainties. But this also does need to work in line with all of the other things. Like if we feel that this just doesn't bring the Bucks to a next level in a coaching sense, that would be a problem. It would be a problem that maybe won't be as significant as it would have been before they got Damian Lillard. But I do think like this is the story. I know we started with Giannis and Dame because we can't now overlook Dame like we often do with Giannis when we do pods. And that makes sense. The Bucks season will kind of live and die with those guys. But really outside of that, like question number one, regardless, you change your coach is going to be how's your new head coach perform? And I think the Bucks situation only exacerbates that.
I think it does too. I also think there's been a pretty strong trend recently in the NBA of first-time head coaches succeeding. I mean, I think it's going to sound funny to count him. And obviously, first year is different than first stint. But since Carlisle in 2011, the only coaches to win a title who weren't in their first head coaching stint with that team are Frank Vogel, Mike Budenholzer, and Michael Malone. I mean, again, Pop has coached with the Spurs for like 1,000 years, so it's funny, but that was his first NBA head coaching job. Then you have Spoelstra, who went right from Heat assistant to Heat head coach. Steve Kerr, who was a first-year head coach, who did win the first year. Tyronn Lue, same deal. Steve Kerr twice. Nick Nurse, again, was his first year. Then Vogel, who had the Indiana stint. Bud, of course, coached the Hawks. Steve Kerr again. And Michael Malone, who coached the Kings. Not saying, of course, that automatically Adrian Griffin is going to be Greg Popovich or even Nick Nurse, but there is kind of a track record of guys without having that requisite experience coming in and having a lot of success, even early in their careers. So I do think there is more safety than it seems from having someone who's never done it before.
I think the flip side of that, Tito, is potential crash and burn, which I'm not saying it's going to be that extreme, but like we could go through a lot of one and done first time head coach. I'm not denying. I don't think being a first time head coach is a hindrance to the point where you can't do that. As you said, that's a thing that has happened over and over again. And if Adrian Griffin is one of the best head coaches in the NBA, he will do that. We don't know. We haven't seen him be a head coach yet. So that's the only part for me. It's like he could go on either of those tracks quite easily. I'm just going to naturally, on most things, err slightly on the side of skepticism until I see it. I have no doubt he can be that, and that is why the Bucks have hired him. But he's got to show it. Like the only way to get past that is to prove it. It's not something where it's like, don't hire a first. We talked even more in the coaching process. Like there were other potential first-time head coaching candidates, and we talked with them. I don't think that's a barrier at all. But until your coach gets there and you see it working, sometimes these things make a lot of sense on paper. They just don't work out. It's not the right fit, whatever it might be. So that's the kind of level of anxiety. It's just like until it's seeing it work, and it's like it's seeing it work for Griffin with the Bucks, and it's just like it's until it's apparent to us that all of this is clicked in place and this was the right guy at the right time. And it is interesting. Like there's no negative to getting Damian Lillard, but it is interesting that they make this colossal move and this opportunity comes up, and you would wonder like what kind of do they go for the exact same coach, the exact same profile if they had Damian Lillard on their roster when they're making those hires. Like I think a lot of those details are kind of interesting, and it leaves a period of adjustment. And it's something where like I have no doubt Adrian Griffin, we heard all about his presentations for everything the Bucks were going to do, and like he would have spent all summer really drilling down and with his staff, and quite a lot of that they would have had to tear up and kind of start afresh. And that could be the greatest gift that they've had. I don't think they're going to be complaining about getting Dame Lillard. But it is just that thing until we see it. Like, we could be genuinely a month from now, this could just be old news, and we could be like, the Bucks are doing really good things. It's clear they're making smart plays offensively, smart plays defensively. Everyone's looking comfortable in their system. Guys who should be getting minutes are getting minutes. The rotation's being managed well. And we may all be like, perfectly happy with this, you know, it's feet up in this regard, and it's like, see what the season delivers from here on. But I do think, like, from Thursday night against the Philadelphia 76ers, it's like eyes will be very, very closely fixed on all those decisions. And even more so because the talent is even greater when he got the job.
Fit in or fit out, Terry?
Okay. Rohan, do you have any coaching thoughts to share?
I mean, I think I just agree with the consensus here, and like I'll echo with what Adam said. It's an unknown. It's really an unknown. It's hard to project what things are going to look like. You cannot have ideas of, oh, we want things to look like this. We want this rotations to look like this. We want these schemes to look like this. We're not going to know. We genuinely don't know, and we're just going to have to wait and see until the season starts. We get a few weeks in, start to see some trends, and then we can sort of come back and analyze how his stint in Milwaukee is really going. Because we can sit here and talk all we want about it, but we're literally not going to know anything until the games start happening.
Something as simple as young guys in the rotation. And I think we've probably gone back and forth on when he was first hired. I think we thought to be a greater emphasis. Obviously, the Bucks roster looks a little different since then, so it's maybe less so. But the reality is he's never been head coach in the NBA, so we don't know exactly where he's going to fall on what percentage of kind of his rotation he'd like to be young guys kind of being bled and that you have this 2-track thing, or if it's just purely I need my best guys for now, and my rotation is super tight. Like, we don't know. We don't know until we see real games.
Adam, what is your Bucks X factor?
My X factor was going to be coaching. I will pivot to something that's going to relate to coaching, relate to a player. This now feels like a cliche that I'm going to bring this player up. But I'm going to say Brook Lopez, because if the defense looks different, that's going to be one of the most important things for keeping this defense functioning. So with the drop off of what you're losing with Drew and with Dame coming in, just on the face of it, in terms of even individual defense, the Bucks starting lineup is considerably worse defensively. That would suggest the importance of Brook Lopez is going to be even greater, and I think they need to find a way to kind of make that work and let him hang as much as possible in a way similar to what he has done, but in a way where honestly his contributions might be even more important in some regards. That is just not a straightforward, I've got an X-shaped, wooden block and there's an X-shaped hole here and I'm just going to put that in place and everything fits perfectly. You've got to really work out what are the limits of what we can push to a Brook. What can he do? How much can he adjust? And I hope we see that. I hope we see them push those limits and maybe feel some of the pain for that in the regular season. That is what the regular season should be for a team like the Bucks at this stage in their journey. And we get the answers. And I think what is going in Brook's favor and in the Bucks' favor is I think he has certainly proven himself to be smart enough that whatever they throw at him mentally, he can be up to it. And he will work as hard as he can to make it work physically. There will be limitations on that. There will be a ceiling on that. And the Bucks just have to work out, like, how far can we push this before we reach what the breaking point is? And what is the best version of our team as a result? Because I think, obviously, we know what Giannis is going to bring defensively, or what he can bring. But I do think Brook now more than ever, and even Ty, you and I talked about this a little bit last week, but I think we seem to currently be projecting Malik Beasley to be a starter. Sorry, to start the season, but then probably for a lot of the regular season, we'll see how things unfold if that was to change for the postseason. He's not a great defender. He may work very hard. He's
not
quick.
Yet.
I'm just going to go with he's not a great defender. I don't think he will be a great defender.
The Malik freak on defense.
So Brook is the guy. Like, Brook really is the guy, particularly when Giannis is going to still have to carry so much offensively. And I don't think it's not just like a guarantee. It's not simple that they work that out. We may end up trying a bunch of things and they end up back to a spot which is closer to where they have been, but without the ideal personnel to work with it. If that ends up being the best version of their defense, the thing that kind of just balances out what their offense should give them and how they hang in games and how they win games. But I think there's a lot to try and there's a lot they can play around with between now and then. And I hope they do and find the answers. because Brook could surprise them. He could weaponize his size, to use a long running GSPN phrase. So we'll see how that pans out. But I do think that is going to be maybe the most essential element in an individual sense to what the Bucks look like defensively this year.
Don't think Robin Lopez is going to be a factor in that?
You lose your turn for that. I do think the zone is here to stay, and I think that is the cleanest Brook Lopez addition defensively in terms of scheme. Like, I think, we talked about it for a while now before we actually saw them do it, and I think it just did make intuitive sense in terms of a different kind of defense you can play. If you want to be more aggressive and go toward the ball more and help more, I think a zone checks those boxes without something dramatic like switching 1 through 5. So you got Brook guarding point guards. Like, I think we all agree you don't want to do that consistently. I think the zone, we've seen some really good results. I feel like that can and should be a much bigger part of the Bucks' arsenal going forward. I think from there is where it gets interesting. And what else do you feel good about Brook doing? I think we've seen some 1 through 4 switching, and maybe Brook kind of helps but gets back. I think that makes sense too. I'll be really intrigued to see other wrinkles. But I mean, to your reference of the weaponize your size thing, Adam, that kind of started from Brook just trying to make guys shoot over him on the perimeter when he did end up out there. And it was like a pretty effective way of defense because it's hard to shoot over someone that big. I mean, it's like a serious, not stupid version of the Eclipse.
Well, it's like I forget where I saw this, but I believe it's the Mavericks that are playing the Spurs to start the year.
Oh.
And Mavericks players are practicing to shoot over Victor Wembanyama because he's just so large.
They got God Shamgod with these like
these brooms. It's like a guy like that. Brook is not that, but he's certainly closer to that than anybody else on this roster.
Yeah, the length is not there. It's
closer
similar
to it than like 5 guys in the NBA. Like,
yeah.
I mean, he is really up in that kind of scale of the largest man in the NBA.
Yeah, I think Brook is my worry with him defensively is more so if you're going to start a guy like Malik Beasley, who I know has already made his place very welcome in this core, this and it's overall with Grayson leaving too, he makes a lot of sense with this roster, but pre-trade and post-trade. My thing though is that defensively, you're asking a lot of him to take on the guys that we're going to see down the line, and overall with their adjusted perimeter defense, it's just asking a lot of Brook to be in the middle and to contest the same shots that he has been contesting for the last 5 years. And it was a lot easier for him to reinvent himself 5 years ago when he's at the peak of his powers and everything like that. But now, they were able to stave off Brook having his back injury and his surgery a couple years ago. It's just a lot to ask of a guy that at that age and that experience and a lot of miles under his belt. I mean, the Celtics are more equipped to do this defensively with who they have now, but it's ultimately the same problems that are going to be the biggest questions facing the contenders in the East or the West. Is like, there's a lot of older centers on these teams that have to hold up throughout the season and have to hold up a lot defensively to get to where they want to be in terms of contending for a championship. And, it's a lot to ask of Brook. It's a lot to ask of Giannis, because I'm sure we'll probably see a lot of small ball lineups and more switching and everything like that. And to your point about zone, Ty, like that was something that the Bucks tried to do under Bud, and it, for whatever reason, just never worked. And whether they had the roster to do it or whether they had the capabilities or whatever, it just never worked. And maybe someone like Adrian Griffin and having fresh ideas and fresh ideologies in terms of how to play defensively can restart that. But it is something that I'm not surprised that they have been tinkering with preseason, because I haven't watched a lot of preseason because I'm waiting for the real thing.
I will say, just to add to that, I don't think this has generally been the highest IQ defensive team. Like they have really been helped by a couple of guys being like exceptional in that regard. And I think both in terms of focus and in terms of just defensive intelligence, the Bucks over the years have at times been left wanting. And it will be interesting to see what new ideas introduced, how quickly they get picked up, and where the consistency is at too. Because I do think that points to some of what you're talking about. I like on occasion the Bucks did try to mix up their defense more, and I mean there were changes that did work successfully under Bud, but there were times where it just looked like it didn't take. And some of that may be on the coaching approach, but I do think, look, this is a preview pod, and we're all feeling optimistic, particularly after good news. So I won't name names, but there are guys who just will lose it a little bit. They just either won't be as locked in, or maybe aren't making reads at that level. It's gonna be interesting to see how all of that pans out, and if Griffin can find the right balance with that.
You know who is a player that really could end up being? This is a good transition.
Can I do one more quick thing?
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry. Okay. I did find it interesting, to your point, Jordan, about Brook, that he was 7th on the Bucks in minutes per game for the preseason. I know it's just the preseason, but within 1 minute per game of Bobby Portis. And again, Brook was very available. Like, he played 4 of the games. He played more than a lot of players. But like, to give a frame of reference, Giannis and Crowder were at 22.5 minutes per game. So was Beasley. So like the other nominal kind of, Crowder was starting for Khris, 2 other starters. Dame was at almost 25 minutes per game, so even more. Brook down at 17.2, just literally 1 minute per game ahead of Bobby. So I do wonder, even if he tries to be available as much, if they kind of limit how much per game he's going to accommodate what he has to do, and the fact that he never wants to take games off as well. Okay, Rohan, who else is important?
Ron, is this going to be a bit? Is this a setup? I was
no. This actually isn't. No. It is not a setup to Thanasis, but though he's a Y factor, maybe.
Yeah, I'm on board with that.
Just
why is he on the roster?
Oh, you set him up so good for that,
Rohan, why did you do that?
I did. I didn't think about it. That's my bad. I own that one.
Well, you're our Gen Z factor, Rohan. You got this. Power through.
So one player who could be very, very crucial and is my X factor is Bossman99. This is a player who, like, we all agreed, or most of us agreed, that if it's anything above the minimum, he should not be returning to the Bucks. Even though he had a good regular season last season, the playoffs were just an abject disaster. Ty and I, we went through this on our IPO pod. Make sure you check that out, by the way, if you're curious about the initial valuations for the Bucks stock market. Same feed. But just after the departures and the moves that have been made this offseason, I should say, one thing that is a premium on this team is just like defensive acumen in any sort of regard. And even though like he didn't really show it last season, we know that Jae Crowder is a player who can have that type of pedigree. And he might be the only like really true switchable forward on this team. Maybe Pat, but I don't think he does it as well.
Giannis?
Okay, besides Giannis. Okay. I mean, Giannis will do anything you want.
So,
switchable is a strong word.
Wow, Ron's just piling on Thanasis here. I don't even need to say anything.
What did I do?
Said he was the Y factor, and then you're like, oh, switchable.
Andre Jackson Jr. season.
Whenever.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So Bossman, I think he could end up playing like a vital role in this team, especially because when we were going through options last season, because one thing we know about John Horst is, one, he moves in silence, and 2, he will acquire a defensive-minded forward at the trade deadline or in the buyout market. It's just going to happen. One thing we were looking at last season is it's not really a ton available. Jae Crowder was really the only option there, especially with the Bucks and the way that their salaries are set up, and now with these rules that aren't necessarily going to take into effect this season, but next season going forward. And just like the salaries that they have on their team, the only really mid-sized salaries on their team remaining are Pat and Bobby, with Grayson going out the door, I should say. And it's just going to be really, really difficult to try to acquire a player like that going forward. And especially with like, there's a lot of, we're going to get to it when we talk about our playoff teams, but there's a lot of parity in this league. There's not going to be a ton of sellers at the trade deadline. A lot of teams that have like a feeling like, hey, we could maybe not win the title because there's only going to be a few teams who think that, but maybe win a series or something. So there's not going to be a ton of sellers at the market. And if you're looking for a guy who wants to step into that role, it's Bossman 99. So if he can actually manage to play his role really, really well, fit in with this new defense, it's going to be he could be poised for a big role. And I know we were talking about it earlier with like who's going to be a starter. I don't necessarily think that Bossman's going to start. I think he could. I think it's not the worst idea in the world.
I think if they're going to do matchup dependent, there's some matchups, especially Boston, where it makes a lot of sense, because I do think you look at the Celtics, and as high as I am on Malik Beasley, maybe being able to scamper around with some of the small guards better than he's been in years past, I do think there's not much for him there, especially when you also factor Dame's got to guard someone on the floor as well. And if they're going to start with Derek White, almost assuredly will be their smallest possible, with their next smallest player being either Drew or one of the Jays, I do think starting another forward in that series could make sense. I want to quickly, so there's a going bit where Rohan clarifies who Bossman is, because a YouTube listener, we just called him Bossman for a whole segment. That YouTube listener commented on the IPO pod. Shout out to Richard, and I thought this was a great comment, so I want to read it. Hey guys, no need to clarify the Bossman references for me anymore. Now I know. Knowledge is power. I am more powerful after every podcast of yours that I listen to. I enjoy them very much. So thank you, Richard, for listening. We're going to, I think, continue clarifying who Bossman is, because I'm sure there are others who aren't locked into what NBA players' screen names are on X.com, but I just want to close the loop there. Richard does now know that Bossman is Jae Crowder,
amazing.
And I find that awesome.
It's amazing. We gotta rectify our mistake.
Yeah.
And if you keep the bid up, more people get more powerful with every episode.
Yeah. If only Bossman could get more powerful every time someone.
Yeah, that'd be great.
That would be.
I think that's. Can we tell him about it?
I think he knows that he goes by Bossman because he's the one who first typed it in.
It's true.
I think it's a good X factor.
He was terrible
in the playoffs.
And I didn't want him back at all. Even I think Rohan probably did get ahead. I didn't want him for the minimum. I just thought he had a loser attitude at the end of last season. I thought his quotes were just. I've had enough of it. Go play. This is another it's like, okay, fresh slate, go prove it. I think Rowan's nailed it. He is the guy, as the roster's constructed, like their dream scenario, he has a good season and they're able to start him for the playoffs instead of Beasley. I do think that is a dream scenario at the moment. We're a long way away from that. He's got to do a lot, but go and prove it. Go and prove it, my guy. You talked a big game and prove that you're still like a passable NBA player, or that you don't just suck. I mean, I have this is not the first time, so I just have no patience for it. I thought his quotes were so bad. It's just loser stuff. I think it was maybe more jarring because we've been fortunate that we haven't had too many books, even in seasons that have gone wrong, come out with those kind of quotes.
It certainly spoke to where things were, though.
I mean,
he was
Marv
not
straight
the
up
person.
retired, so maybe that.
He was, but that's
yeah.
listen,
Marv's like, I'm too old for this shit.
Maybe Bossman should have done that. I don't know. This is prove that he shouldn't have done that. I think he was not the person that might have spoken to where things were at. But you having laid an egg in the playoffs were not the guy to come out and deliver that.
Well, I think really his whole, I guess, plan of action the entire year last year was off base 100%. He's like, I'm not going to show up to the Suns. You guys can trade me wherever I want. And then the longer that went on, and he got more agitated that there wasn't played, even though he could have played for the Suns, even if it was less play time. And then he's ultimately playing the role that he did want to play with the Suns, that he has played with the Bucks. Like, that is kind of...
To be fair, I think there was probably something else going on there with, like, Monty Williams and that relationship.
Yes. Again, there's similar dynamics with the relationship. The only reason why I was laughing this entire time is that Rohan's making these great points, and he just includes Boss Man, and I can't not laugh at that. And then Adam's like, "Go play. You sucked last year." We've never been more like sports talk radio like ever. But anyway, to the point,
soundboard.
We need a soundboard. Blah, 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 blah. Just like when talking about Jae Crowder's last year.
The Monty Williams point and the way that situation, like that only adds to it for me, because it's like there may be something else there. So you've come from one situation where you were just grumbling and it fell apart. You get to a new spot, a spot that you talk about wanting to be there, the place where, you have ties to the city.
We're looking at houses.
And it's like, and then you're very quickly grumbling again. At a certain point, just, take a look in the mirror, my guy, and work it out. And I hope that's what this offseason was. He could be crucial. I'm not doubting what Jae Crowder has done in his career, what he can be. The version that the Bucks saw when it mattered, and I know you guys are always quick to be like, in the playoffs, couldn't care less about before the playoffs last year. I really
the reason we bring it up is because we saw the vision of what it could be if it actually did put itself together.
Yeah.
And also, it
was like a hallucination in the desert.
It's not a player who has a track record of shrinking in the playoffs either.
Yeah.
But he's played for teams that have gone deep in the playoffs, like the Suns.
And he's had big playoff series for those teams, too.
That's why I think
Miami in the bubble,
Yeah. What's really interesting to me is that the Bucks have had guys flame out, and Mirotic is playing in an entirely different league. Marvin Williams retires. They move on from PJ Tucker after winning the championship. Not that flamed out, but you know what I mean.
And that this is the guy who's still around, and how
that is odd. That's not normal. Like, that's like Furkan Korkmaz. Like, I want to get traded, and then they're like, okay, we'll give you an extension. But
he didn't have a market. Like, that's what it came down to. It's like, definitely he wants to win.
Yeah,
Milwaukee to him is more appealing as a destination than it is for 90% of the league's players, even with the improved perception. And whatever offers are there, he was also like, okay, I'm definitely going back here, and there is a new coach. But like the thing I know, as I've been on this soapbox on him going back to free agency, do any of us think that based on his play, he was actually unfairly treated in terms of minutes and playing time and opportunity in the postseason?
No,
I believe
different thing than not knowing what his role or purpose was on the team.
That is the
I think
point.
Both can be true. And he said right then in that same interview, he liked the locker room, he liked the atmosphere. I do think it was a coaching, and I'm not saying it was entirely Bud's fault, but I do think there was a disconnect there that Portis spoke to as well.
I think things were just, we won't know all these things until people go on the record and principally
people retire and write books.
Yeah.
Well, but really, I think it's also
the first Pat Connaughton Publishing House memoir is going to be when we find out for sure.
I don't think Bud will ever do it, but I think there was just a lot going on.
Yeah,
and I think ultimately it just led to what it was, and I don't know whose fault that is. Really, I think everybody comes out looking bad, and it leads to Giannis saying there's no failure in sports, and then extending today.
I think it probably just like it kind of wore out its welcome, or it got old, and everyone in all parts. Change would do good here.
Yeah, I've seen this idea since the Dame trade of like, oh, maybe they should have just kept Bud after all because you had the great defensive guy in. And it's like, one, you can't hinge on ending up with Damian Lillard when you have one first-round pick to trade. And two, I think 100% Adam. I think we've heard that fairly directly from some of the guys. And, most of the guys haven't really addressed that idea. But there's certainly been some like, everything's very refreshing this year. The energy at practice, all this kind of stuff. I think it was time for a change. But I think great X Factor, Rohan. Do we want to do a quick round of mini X Factors?
Yes.
I mostly just want to talk about Andre Jackson Jr. Is the role?
No. We're missing the biggest one though.
What?
It's Khris.
Oh yeah, it's true.
Khris is. I mean, I was going to say that, before
Chris's health? Is that even
No,
more
I
specific?
think Khris
Or his game?
Khris health for sure is obviously the biggest thing because we haven't seen a fully healthy Khris Middleton season since the championship year. It's been a while. And he's had a lot of surgeries, a lot of procedures done. I think the Bucks, as we talked about at the time of the Dame trade, and obviously since then, I think the Bucks making the deal that they did, they recognize the fact that Khris Middleton cannot be the offensive engine when, it's 14 seconds left on the shot clock. Where's the ball going to go to? It could go to Giannis, but I know who's going to be driving the ball. It's going to be Khris. And what he looks like coming out of this, latest round of getting healthy from the offseason, having a lot of time to recover. Longest offseason the Bucks have had in a while, obviously. I think that is very big. I think the fact that Khris Middleton is going to, the pieces are there for him to age well into what would likely be the last years of him as a Buck, even beyond this contract. I think it just solves a lot of the problems that we could have seen had the Bucks gone into the year with largely the same roster that they had last year. And it's like, okay, Khris, do what you've been doing the last 11 years or 10 years. And it's like, he's just not the same guy. And I welcome that, but I also think that does come with challenges.
I also think, just quickly, Khris getting back to 18, 6 and 6 on really good efficiency, even if you want to say it's a lesson, the shots are easier. So I think even if it could be similar stats, even if he's not quite as impactful or doing as much, we'll say, that is probably also what puts them over the edge of it turns out it doesn't matter if your defense is a bit worse when you're just doing this kind of stuff offensively. And I think if Khris has a full season of playing like that, their offense is just going to be ridiculous, assuming, relative health for everyone else. And that's crucial. I mean, I think that is what puts them over the top of they're a good offense now to them and Phoenix and Denver are the best three offenses in the NBA. And, it's maybe not close to anyone as close to those three teams. Right. And I think, maybe that sounds underwhelming. They might be the third. And I'm not saying they'll be third, but if you're up there with those two teams and there's no one else, that means you're a pretty damn good offense because those teams are also pretty ridiculous offensively. And I think you could pretty easily build a case that the Bucks could have the best defense out of those three hyper offensive teams, which is a good place to be. But yeah, I think Khris is a great call, not just the health, but getting back to that old form, maintaining it, and can he do a little bit more defensively than we've seen the last 2 years if he has to do less offensively? I'm not going to expect, 2015, 16 Khris or anything like that, but would be nice.
Wouldn't that be nice?
I think 14, 15 was probably the peak.
14, 15, I think was peak
Khris.
3-and-D Khris.
Was 15, 16 was
before,
when he got hurt, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
and that's when it all went sideways. Darn you, cousin centers. I mean, Khris obviously is a big X factor. He is jacked this season, so that's good. It's good for his social media at least. But let's see how it translates on court. But yeah, I think Khris is going to be a good litmus test for how this team is doing. If Khris is humming along, he's chugging along, that means the offense is doing really well and they're actually playing in a rhythm. If he's not, if he's being a little inconsistent, it's maybe something's going up here. So something's going on here, excuse me. So I think monitoring how Khris plays is a good really test and indicator of how the Bucks are doing as a whole.
The canary in the Chrismon.
Yeah.
Well, now I feel silly for saying Andre Jackson Jr. before Khris.
Go for it. No, go for it.
I did the thing I said we weren't going to do. I debated this with Rohan on the aforementioned IPO podcast. We ended up calling their stocks even though I'm higher on Ajax, Rohan's higher on MarJon coming into the year. I guess we'll combine them. Let's just say that sort of 10th rotation spot. We've already ran over, it's going to be Campaign as the backup point guard, Bossman, Bobby, and Pat coming off the bench, Malik Beasley, and then obviously, when everything is right, Giannis, Khris, Dame, Brook. That's 9 players. If it's a 10-man rotation or whenever injuries pop up, whoever's going to end up 10th in the pecking order, whether they're in the rotation every game or not, out of presumably MarJon, Ajax, maybe AJ Green. I mean, not the athletic defensive wing you'd look for, but by God, is his 3-point shooting probably the best NBA skill any of those three players have. I mean, it's ridiculous how consistently he knocks them down. But I think especially given what the roster needs defensively, looking at MarJon and Ajax, can one of those two be like a useful NBA role player? I think that question matters a lot, even if they wouldn't be a big playoff factor. You know, again, your top 8, really like 7 ends up being crucial at playoffs. But if one of those guys can give you consistent, strong NBA minutes, that helps a lot as you weather the various storms of an NBA season where 2 guys are out for a week, or someone just doesn't have it, or, oh, we just really need to throw in some defense into this lineup, and we don't have a lot of levers to pull to do that right now. So, you know, instead of just making it all about Ajax, even though I'm super excited about him and love what we've seen from him, I think one of the mini X factors is going to be, can one of those 2 players be a real contributor? Not like Twitter's excited and he had a dunk, but also traveled a bunch or missed a bunch of threes and still doesn't look like someone you can trust. Can one of them really step into that role? That's going to be massive, obviously down the line as well, but I think for this season too.
I think part of that starts, as we mentioned earlier, with, well, how does the organization, how does the coaching staff view those guys, and in terms of a fit and in terms of working them in? Is it a longer term approach, or is there a feeling of this could be something where with minutes, with reps, we've got someone useful right now? It just remains to be seen. We don't know. We don't know with the staff. We don't know Griffin, so we'll find out. There's so much to be excited about with MarJon. I just think consistency seems to be an issue. I think you made a joke about this when we recorded last week, Ti, but it is like he basically alternates between, you know, games, whether it's going to be an offensive outburst, and I think at times there can be some elements of that to what he's doing defensively, and I'd still have questions that can only be answered with him if we saw him very regularly in consistency in a real rotation role. Like, there's part of, I think you'll only learn how he'll hang defensively if he gets the chance. If Andre Jackson Jr. was to find himself in a really, like, I don't want to say a really big role, honestly, any kind of role where he's getting playing time as a rookie would be that by Buck standards in recent years. That would be a real break with how they've done things. It would be a surprise. The counter argument to that is they haven't had many options because of the lack of picks and the guys that they've picked up along the way. I like the flashes I've seen from him. I really think there's something there. It just seems like this team might have too many like playable, experienced players, and then you have MarJon ahead of him in the queue in terms of just being around the NBA environment. It could be really tough to find an opportunity for him, even though I think his skills, he could be the one. He kind of feels like the defensive X factor that the Bucks go chasing every year, right? It's like, if you could develop him right in the next few years, John Horst doesn't have to make that kind of move that Rohan alluded to earlier, where he loves to make a trade or go after a certain kind of guy in the buyout market. You could have this kind of quirky defensive presence who can play multiple spots and is kind of skilled in multiple different ways too. Like, there are other glimpses of his game even on the other side of the floor that I'm like, could be something there. He's my kind of weird, I think, is the way I'd put it on Andre Jackson Jr. at the moment, that I'm intrigued by that. But it's like, it's a long line for him to work his way through to get playing time this year. I think that could just be borderline insurmountable. But who knows? Like, we don't know what way injuries could fall, what moments opportunities open up. And hey, it might just take one. He could grab it with both hands and you never look back from there. We see this happen with other teams and young players all the time. I think we're going to be crying out for the Bucks to have anyone who could do that. Maybe it's him, maybe it's MarJon, maybe we finally get one of those this year.
I think Andre Jackson, in terms of, he's the most appealing to me because I can at least say he's at lead at something. Like, his athleticism is just jaw dropping, and the fact that he leverages it in so many different ways, whether it's in transition, defensively, he obviously will have to get better in terms of guarding guards, like positions,
or actual NBA players.
Actual NBA players, very, very, yes. But I think for me, it's like that has been the biggest problem that the Bucks have had in terms of like, well, you have these interesting guys. Like Sandman was interesting. I'm not saying that he's an NBA player, but he's on an NBA team after leaving Milwaukee. But like, do you have the requisite skills or at least the mental processing to kind of back that up? Because you could be a hyper athlete. Thanasis is a hyper athlete. They're not other. You need other skills to.
What did I do?
I'm just saying.
Is your name Thanasis? Did I miss something?
Yeah, it basically is.
But I think for me, it's like I like MarJon. I think getting Dame really helps him. I just think that a lot of the skills that he was focusing on trying to get better at, they don't need as much. They don't need his. They need some shot creation. He doesn't. Is not just going to be standing in the corner and hitting a three every once in a while or getting the ball every once in a while. But I think the things that he has tried to excel at in terms of like skill creation, that sort of thing, it's not as needed with how the Bucks were versus they are now. And I think that will take time to, again, how do you play around not just one star now with Giannis? You're playing with a guy that's a very ball dominant guard who creates his own gravity in a very palpable way. And things can be things are made a lot simplified for him in ways that we found very exciting last year. Just like, hey, if you're running the floor, that's at least 6 points if you get steady minutes. You know what I mean? Like, you're just going to get those kind of baskets. And a guy like Damian Lillard helps him, obviously, in transition, but in half-court settings as well, where he can leverage his way in getting cuts to the rim, way cuts or whatever. I'm sounding like an X's and O's man, but those kind of things that like
roll for Newmark,
little Spain pick and roll. Hello Madrid. Sorry, that's not a play, but I think for the young guys, and I want to give a shout out to Khris Middleton too, because he's at least intriguing to me, but I just think when we have talked about like the Bucks rookies in the past, it's going to be a lot different to how things were set up, where it's just how Bud's offense ran, where we had the zones, we had the spots. It's everybody's going to touch the ball at least once. Let's see what you can do with it. And a lot of times it looked good. When it mattered most, it looked bad. But when you have guys that can create shots or have defenses warped towards their gravity or their attention, that's when you can make plays when you have a lot of space. And I hope to see, even if they don't have larger roles, I just hope to see that framework with which they can build it on in the future. Because again, for all these guys that we're talking about, it's not necessarily about this year because they are the players that are ahead of them on the depth chart. It's about next year. It's about the year after that, because Giannis just extended, guys. Come on.
It is funny looking back. I mean, last year's roster, especially like the rotation, like the rotation that was drawn up by the playoffs, it has to be the least possible athletic roster you could build around Giannis, right? I mean, from top to bottom, like it's like MarJon is the most, as you mentioned, like it was like, oh my God, someone can run the floor. This is crazy, because no one else could. I mean, it was like the least bursty team possible, and I think some of that was, finding players who have burst and also could fit in to what Bud was looking for offensively, from being able to knock down shots. Right, that was everyone on the team except Giannis and kind of Drew had to be able to knock down shots if they were going to be in the rotation. There's just not a lot of guys you can acquire for a low cost that are like super athletes and super dependable shooters. Like, those guys are too good. So that's kind of just how things ended up being built. It is just fun to see these two guys generally. And I want to hand to Rohan, MarJon's dad, here in a second. But it is just fun to see some more athleticism.
You've moved on from your former son. You've abandoned your boy.
No, I'm ready to see.
I hope this adoption goes better than the last couple.
First of all, Grayson was fine.
He was fine.
Wow, what a ringing endorsement, Dad. He was fine.
He's
You said he's not even going to be in the rotation with the Suns, Ty.
I wasn't my son.
I know, but I'm saying like my opinion is still much higher than everyone
Well,
else's.
yeah, I would hope me, a random guy, has a lower opinion than you, his dad. I think that logically really holds up.
I would say your uncle.
Because I'm friends with Rohan. Oh, that's true. I'm a bad uncle.
You're not blood, but you're like, hey,
not the real
it's Uncle Ty over there.
Ty, right?
Yeah. Well, sorry, little Gray.
What were you talking about?
MarJon and Ajax.
So my thing with this is I will agree with the consensus that Andre Jackson Jr. is very, very, very promising and fits the mold of a team, like a player that this team really needs. I just want to pump the brakes a little bit here. Like, again, we were seeing him go up against guys who aren't going to be in the league. It's just very, very similar to like a college atmosphere, which I think is why he started to thrive a little bit more there. If it actually translates to against like second unit NBA players, I'll be very, very, very happy about it. I just don't expect that to really happen.
I feel like he was.
I don't think we'll see it. I don't know.
I don't think we see it.
Say that again.
He was better against better competition. He was worse in summer league than he was. Preseason is not like a bunch of guys who we're never going to see again.
A lot of the times he was in the game, it was.
I don't think it was not NBA players.
I don't think so against. I know the Thunder, but I feel like he was out there in meaningful minutes. Maybe I'm misremembering.
I mean, they played the Grizzlies twice, and everyone loves their whole roster from top to bottom. I don't think it was all just bums.
It's not bums, but again, it's not going to be what he sees in a normal NBA season.
I'll be the one to say I think he's going to contribute this year. That'll be the claim I stake this time. I think it makes so much sense.
Who plays more minutes? Who plays more minutes?
Ajax.
We got a friendly wager.
We fought over it on the IPO pod. We do.
We did. We compromised on it being even though we both thought the other way.
Yeah.
I think
who coaches more, Adrian Griffin or Terry Stotts?
I think MarJon does get more minutes.
I think he gets more minutes early in the season.
You get like he's used to the NBA environment, first of all. Like, we have to remember Andre Jackson Jr. is a rookie who's going to be starting to get acclimated to being in the NBA world. MarJon's been there for a year. He has the inside track. Like, he knows how to play with some of these other players. What is it, Jordan?
I just laugh at He's been there. It was the way you said it. You had a head tilt. Sorry, continue your point.
He's familiar with the environment, and it's a lot easier for second-year players compared to first-year players, like, especially when you're trying to break ground and trying to contribute. It's really difficult, and I know Bud is going to be different than Adrian Griffin, but just in general, it's really difficult if you're a young player on a contender. It's like really rare to see them sort of contribute right away. Like, that's why Christian Brown was just such an anomaly, in the sense like he was an actual contender the contributor for a Nuggets team that won the title. And it's like, this is weird and strange, because it's just really, really difficult to do that, to break through when you're literally just starting to get acclimated to being an NBA player in general, much less like the court, like the players, all of the coverages, everything. It's really, really difficult.
Was Austin Reeves a first-year guy too?
No.
He wasn't?
No.
Well,
I don't think it's going to be easy, but I also think that MarJon and Ajax are on the same footing in this new team.
Also, Andre Jackson Jr.'s shot is disgusting, and it's just a major negative.
That's fine.
In my opinion.
Yeah.
There are lots of guys who.
Does that matter? Does that matter as much with Dame?
No, it doesn't.
Yes,
it really
because
doesn't.
what is your role going to be on offense? Because at the end of the day,
the Draymond Green role.
They're gonna.
He is a passer, and he likes to pass, and he's good at it.
That is the thing, is that Dame, with his gravity, Giannis is obviously the ultimate example, but you can have non-shooters. MarJon is also, I would consider this as well.
Yeah, I'm not saying MarJon's a great shooter. I'm saying that, one, I think MarJon's a better shooter. I'm not saying he's great. I think he's better. And two, he makes quicker decisions. Like Ajax, I will agree.
With that, actually.
I think if anything, Jackson makes too quick of decisions because he's thinking way ahead than
I think he panics in those situations, and it's not good. Like in these, like when you're being relied on, like, hey, we're actually giving you the ball here, even though we have Giannis, we have Dame, we have Khris, we have Brook, we have whatever. Hey, it's like, hey, you have the ball here, do something. You can't just like freeze. You can't panic in those situations. And
but I think to Jordan's point, I think the Bucks roster is so different. So, for example, it's not just Dame, but you could have lineups where, let's say it's Giannis is sitting, and you put Ajax out there with Lillard and Malik Beasley, and you might say we've got Khris there, and you could have Bobby. His shooting isn't that important there. You need someone to do some other things. And I think he can do enough of the basic facilitating. Again, basic. You're not going to be asking him to do much of anything. You've got much better guys on the floor. He can do, if he has to factor in, if the offense comes his way, he can keep it moving. He can make smart plays. And his defensive skill could be very valuable there. Now, that's a could because you're right in saying, like, he's a rookie. This is a big team, big expectations, and he's coming up against real NBA players, and he'll come up against some of the best NBA players. But I do think that's a very different situation even than anything that Bud could have put MarJon in last year, for example, where Drew Holiday is out there as well. And you don't have not just a good shooter, but someone with like real gunner, like kind of tendency, someone who is going to let it fly in the way that Malik Beasley does. Like you've got a different kind of makeup where your lineups could look very, very interesting, but might just need a guy who's going to be something of the glue and is not going to be a key offensive cog. I do think that is where it's different. And that could play to MarJon's benefit as well. Like I think it'll apply equally to both guys. They are different lineup configurations than we would have been thinking about a year ago.
I just think, even though he's a rookie, he's maybe the best player on the roster suited to guard like a given NBA shooting guard. And that being true, if it is, and I'm not saying it's for sure true, but I think it might be. And I think that's the kind of weird situation that can get a rookie a real role. And just in terms of like nobody else.
I just think that's a lot. It's a lot to ask for a second round rookie.
Yeah.
It's a lot to ask.
Look at the roster. Who's better? Who's better at guarding a two guard?
We need to see him do it.
Exactly.
I am high on him, and I think there's a lot there. Like I have confidence. But
this isn't entirely me being high on him. It's me being low on the Bucks roster's ability to do that. It's not a really high bar. Seriously, who is besides him?
That is a good point.
Is it Malik?
It might be MarJon.
Khris or Pat?
Yeah.
I think it might be Pat. I think it might be Pat.
I know again.
That's not high, but the guy, we've got to see the guy actually
see him
hold up, like in every way, mentally, with the pace of an NBA game. Like there is a lot more to that. I feel like this has become my entire brand to just be like, yeah, we got to see stuff actually happen. Play the games. How about they play the games and we see what happens? This is my new brand now.
Go out there and play.
I do think we have to see how he keeps his head above water. Like it's great talking about his physical tools, his skills in a vacuum. You got to go and put it out there when the lights are at their brightest, and that is a very, very different thing. So I don't disagree with the idea, but he's got to at least do it a few times before we can fully jump to that. You may well be right.
Preseason time.
I've seen actually all the hemming and hawing of the last time the Bucks drafted an old guard at 36 overall, and all the questions of, is he going to be able to hit the ground running and player one rookie of the year?
This is revisionist. This is so revisionist.
What's revisionist about that?
Who was doubting to that level? It certainly wasn't anyone in this group.
Everyone thought Malcolm Brogdon was going to be awesome right away.
I certainly did. I remember you thinking he was going to be awesome.
Andre Jackson,
he was going to be that
rookie
good.
of the year over.
I remember. I'll shout out Lucas Harkins because we were up behind the book pass.
He's the only one
he was there, and Ty was like, Lucas has joked about you, so you're like, God, this seems like a lot. Once I dived into that, I was like, this is the guy. He was who I wanted that year. Like that's who I wanted to pick, and I thought, yeah, he'd be good. And I think Bucks fans really got on board that quick because he had the pedigree. I don't think that's it. That's a real. I think we should just bench that and move it away that Andrew Jackson Jr. doesn't have to deal with any part of the Malcolm Brogdon was also picked in this spot stuff.
I think he can overcome the expectations of Malcolm Brogdon. I hope so.
Winning Rookie of the Year?
That's not what I
Malcolm
mean.
Brogdon
Winning the award.
Really, really good NBA player who health has not worked, on his side. But
yeah, I just mean expectations don't tend to work. Like guys don't carry the expectations.
How many second round picks?
Brogdon.
I mean, Ty, like a lot of Malcolm Brogdon is an excellent example of a second round pick working out. How many second round picks are out of the league after 2 years?
A lot of them.
So many.
Yeah.
So it's just, I wouldn't really use that example of like a guy being picked in the same spot. Because if you look previously at different spots, majority of them are going to be not NBA players.
I'm guessing a lot in the 30s are.
Okay, let's do this.
I'm getting nervous by how bullish you are, Ty. I was like there with you, and you're going so far.
What did I say that's actually the Malcolm Brogdon thing is tongue in cheek. Setting that aside, what else? Did I say
that's good to know. That's tongue in cheek.
Okay, since Malcolm Brogdon, are you guys ready?
Sure.
Jonah Bolden of the 76ers, Mitchell Robinson of the Knicks, Cody Martin, who I believe that's the Heat. He's on the Heat now. Or is that Caleb?
That's the Hornet. Still an NBA player.
Tyler Bay, Miles McBride,
Deuce McBride,
Gabriel Procida.
Not sure about him.
The year before Malcolm Brogdon was Rakeem Christmas, and the year before that was Johnny O'Brien.
Another legend. Bucks and 36 overall pick.
Yeah.
I think he's going to be pretty good. I don't think we'll see. We'll see. I'm excited about it.
36 overall pick in 2005 was Ursan Ilyasova.
Wow. Stamped. Bucks should use that pick more. That's the market inefficiency. That's an insane
if they could just pick where
they've had a better hit rate on that than the second overall pick.
Yeah.
Gosh darn it.
Well, they've done good with the first one.
In some cases.
In some cases. They did one once anyway.
I think that's a pretty good.
Once,
what's pretty good? Bogut's a fair.
Listen, we don't need to.
Yeah,
we're not even going Bogut.
We're in the weeds.
Anyway.
Who else has
it's going to be interesting to watch.
I have no
X Factor.
I mean, we can go to Bucks win total and then our playoff teams if there's no more mini X Factor.
Yeah, let's do it.
It's already a long pod.
Yeah, well, Giannis doesn't extend every day. Kind of threw a wrench in the
kind of does.
Many days. The Bucks number I've got here is 53.5. Are we good to use that one? Does it matter?
Yeah, let's do that. I'm just going to smash the over.
Yeah, I'm taking the over as well.
I believe that's what it was last year, right?
It might have even been a little lower.
It was lower because I think I went under, and I was wrong.
Everyone, you and Rohan went under. Adam pushed, which is insane on a half. Actually, it wasn't a half.
I think it was a full.
You can't really push at a half.
Well, I think if
I pushed, it definitely must.
You'd be surprised, Rod. You never know what Adam Silver might be working on in that laboratory.
I'm taking the under this year.
53.
I'm
taking the under.
Yeah.
Where do you think they finish? What is your record prediction?
52 wins, third in the East.
Oh, so barely. Okay.
Third in the East, eh?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a good transition to who is your first two teams in the East then.
I don't think Jordan made his over under yet.
Don't let him not, because he'll try to not do
I'm not.
Did he not say over?
No,
I'm saying over. I'm saying over. Everybody, we're gonna run this fucking league. Sorry.
All right then. Rohan. Rohan's been transition interrupted twice. That's cruel. It was a good transition.
I'm trying out here.
Yeah. So
sorry, Rohan.
I think we all have consensus on the top three. Go ahead, Rohan. Take it away.
So, Adam, what was your first? How about we do it this way? I'm going to name teams that are going to be in personally, when I'm coming up with these lists, I did not rank them. I only ranked them in top 6 and then play it. That's all I did. So it's 1 through 6 in each conference and then 7 through 10 in each conference. It's whatever order I say them in. It is not, in first
record placement.
Yes. Yeah. So let's go through our top 6 in the East. I'm going to name a name. A team. If you guys do not have that team in your list, speak up, and I will continue doing that until we have a disagreement.
So is this in our top 6? Is that
in our
Top
six?
six. Top six.
Top 6 in the East. The Milwaukee Bucks,
Hold on.
the Boston Celtics, the Cleveland Cavaliers, the New York Knicks, the Philadelphia 76ers, the Miami Heat. Oh, cool. So we all have the same top 6.
I didn't have a list coming in.
What the?
So you just sat quietly anyway?
Well,
You're just like, sounds good.
I'm formulating my list.
Okay, so were any of those teams not in your top 6?
I think
I forgot Philly.
I'm determining how bold I want to be.
Are Philly not in your top 6, Jordan?
You
Is that
didn't
what
have
you're
Philly?
saying? Well,
It's
by
because
ties,
it's because I forgot them.
Oh, so now that you know that
Alright.
they're in your top
Yeah.
6.
I've got 1 to 15 ranked for both conferences, so I can buy some time here for people if they want.
Okay, so who was your 1 and 2 then?
I'm going Cavs at 1.
Give me a break.
This doesn't mean remotely close to it either that the Cavs are the best team in the East or not. That's the Bucks. The Cavs are the young up and comer though, who may just care most about pushing for this. I think it'll be pretty close. They've got some good continuity. I think they've got better, and they look to me like a team that are ready to move up a level, at least in the regular season. And that might be all this amounts to, but like, to be clear, I don't think we're going to have sky high win totals in either conference, but I have first, second, and third in the East at 54, 53, and 52 wins. So I'm not really putting a whole lot through this, but I think if push comes to shove late in the season, the Celtics and the Bucks may be just a little bit more relaxed, or may focus on rest or getting things right in a way where the Cavs might just be desperate to make a statement for where they're at.
Or first of all, I do agree with you, Adam. I may not say they're going to be the number 1 team in the East, but I do think they are poised for a big rise. Like their main additions like Max Strus, George Niang, those are players that just fit perfectly into their system, and they have that continuity. Like you'd mentioned, you have another year of Evan Mobley's development. How is this going to, how much of a leap can he make in this upcoming season? It's just, they're going to be a wins machine in the regular season. They're in my top 3 in the East, my unofficial top 3, because I didn't officially rank them. But yeah, I think
you can rank them now.
I'm not going to. That's too much effort, and we're already waiting for these 2.
I've got the top 3 ranked.
Okay. 1 second time.
Oh, sorry.
But yeah, it's one thing I will say is, like, if the Bucks and Celtics are sort of jostling at 2 and 3, I think one of them might try to make a push for number 1, because you don't want that second round matchup. That's something that's like sort of been a thing in years past, where it's like the second round of the East is really the conference finals.
Give me the second round matchup. That's how the Bucks got their championship. I know Ti said this on a pod recently, and it's like, it'd just be nice not to do that. I'm like, hey, give me a Hawks equivalent in the conference finals. I'm cool with that. It doesn't really matter. I know it's obviously worse when you lose and you go out in the second round. It makes no difference if you win. I'm at a point where I personally don't care about that. You're gonna have to beat these teams anyway.
I think I'm starting to get to that point, but I'd still prefer it to be in a conference finals matchup. But it's like, you could see one of the Celtics or Bucks like, hey, we have a real chance to go and get the 1 seed here. Let's go make a push. I could see that happening, or maybe just go down to 4th. Who knows? It'll be interesting to see for sure. So Ti, now that you have a list, I assume
I have a top
any
3.
of those teams. Okay, we'll work on a top 6 then. Jordan, you mentioned you had forgot about the 76ers. I think that really speaks to how you feel about them, but you still have them in your top 6, right?
Yeah, they're in my top 6. I'm moving out the Brooklyn Nets.
Jordan's list is unhinged from the jump.
You had the Nets in your top 6.
Okay, 1 second here. What?
Excuse me.
Jordan, they're horrible.
The Brooklyn Nets finished 45 and 37 last year. They were the 6th seed.
I have some bad news about the not KD part of their season.
They weren't that great.
They were bad. They were bad. That's another way to put it.
No, they were.
After
they
the
were
trade,
fine.
They were bad.
They were.
Michael Bridges is
Mikhail.
Whatever.
Not whatever. It's his name, Jordan.
Sorry.
Unless it's
Mikhail.
Michael Bridges is a guy we don't know
Another
about
guy
who's
in
going
the
to
guy.
push them into. It's going to push them into the top 6.
They
So
just
he's been
signed him
grinding- he's been grinding
after the
Long
roster
Island.
cut down.
He's been grinding
I'm
Long
just saying-
Island tape.
I'm also just saying that one of the principal players of the 76ers is not currently with the team.
That's
So
probably a
therefore,
good thing.
but not for their regular season performance.
I mean, one of the primary players of the Nets has a track record of not being
Yeah.
with the team, and that could rear its head at any moment.
That is
I
a
don't
good
know.
point. That is a good point. I'm just saying, I'm a believer. Indiana Pacers, I'm also a believer, but I'm
Are they in your
putting
top
the-
6?
They're not in my top 6.
Okay,
I'm
I
putting
was like,
the
oh my
Sixers in
God.
there.
Oh,
Top Philadelphia top Sixers, but at the very bottom because they're not.
Is your top 6 the same as Rowan's top 6 and my top 6 in terms of teams?
what's your
yeah.
What's your top 6, Jordan? Just say it.
I
so we can
have-
confirm.
Boston, Bucks, Cleveland, Miami, Knicks, Sixers.
Okay, good.
Yes, same as ours.
Okay, Ty, do you have a top 6?
Sure. I've got Bucks number 1, Cavs number 2, Celtics number 3. We all talk about they're thin. They have a great top 6, but that's it. And one of them is 39-year-old Al Horford. One of them is Kristaps Porzingis. One of them is Drew, who's been good to miss about 12 games a year. I don't see them as a wins juggernaut. Maybe they'll prove me wrong. Maybe Jalen will dribble with his left hand. Anything could happen. I'd still got them
He'll
third.
try for sure.
Not very hard based on the clips I've seen. So I've got Bucks. Bucks 1, I just think they're the best team, even if they don't try that hard. I mean, Chris barely played last year. Giannis and Drew missed a bunch of games. They won 58. They're just really good. I just think they're going to win a bunch almost no matter what. And you guys already talked about the Cavs. Agree entirely with that. So Bucks, Cavs, Celtics. I am then going to put the Knickerbockers. I just think they're fine. And Tibbs will just grind out wins. Then I'll put the Sixers. I think they're going to pay for all this instability over the last few years. Then I'm going to put the Pacers. I've gone back and forth. First I was high in the Pacers. Then I was high in the Magic. Then I looked at all these Magic guards. I'm like, no, they stink too much. I really like their long-term future.
So you were considering the Magic over Miami?
Yeah, I just don't think they're a regular season team. I think they got
That's fair.
worse, and they were a play-in
it's not
team
bad.
last year.
You're not wrong. They were hurt a lot last year, but
Did
no,
they
I
care?
agree with you. I agree with your point, though.
I'm going Heat at 4, by the way. I mean, I think there's a massive gap between the top 3, but what comes next is not great. And as much as may not have been a regular season team,
We
see
of all
what the
people cannot
Sixers-
disrespect the Heat.
we'll see exactly, and we'll see what the Sixers resolves itself as,
that
and if that
disrespect?
ultimately means a gain for them. I think having the Pacers and considering the Magic over the Heat is pretty disrespectful.
Maybe they should win more games and make their roster better instead of worse.
I got Josh
Sleepy.
Richardson.
Sleepy
Oh.
Pat Riley.
Oh, be careful. Who's
You see, they're
next?
looking at Pat. You see, Pat Riley said the team's looking to add a 25 point per game score.
I think
I
the
am
Bucks
not.
are too.
I am
think
not
most
And they
starting the
did.
season.
They
Making
did,
fun
Pat.
of the
We
Miami
did.
Heat. This is only gonna end poorly. I'm not. I'm just gonna be like, oh, the Heat, yeah. Like,
I'm keeping the Heat in my top 6. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like that's
So
a team
Indiana,
that's-
sell me on Indiana, Ty.
I think they had a good, fun core previously. They finally, Miles Turner beat the trade block legend allegations, and I think found a real role there now, and he's a perfect fit there. And I think when you look at the role players like the Cavs, I think they just added some perfect role players this offseason, but even more of them. Like, I think Obi Toppin, all of his limitations that kept him to the bench in New York, I think given that they have a stretch 5 there, his athleticism and his ability to score when paired with, of course, my guy, Tyrese Halliburton, is going to be a potent pick and roll threat, especially because you have the stretch 5 to minimize the spacing effects there. And we've already seen, I think, some fun alley-oops in their preseason games. I like Jarris Walker as a backup. And I think Bruce Brown is a great addition as well to just help them defend better. And I think Halliburton's going to put them in really good spots offensively. I think they're going to be good. And I think they're going to have that excitement of being a young team that's good for the first time. That's going to carry them a little bit higher in the regular season. I think their goals are different than a team like Miami's goals, who, I mean, they just went to the finals from the play-in. Are they really approaching this season like let's make sure Jimmy plays a ton because we have to be getting this certain spot. I mean, I think if anything, they're going to come into the season like, whatever. Let's play all these young guys a bunch and try and get ready and spare Jimmy's legs, because you look at how their playoffs went, even just the playoffs, not the regular season part of it. Jimmy had to do so much against the Bucks. He was really not as effective in the next couple of rounds. I think they're going to be more sparing with those guys. So that's why I like Indiana to kind of burst onto the scene. I like Orlando just because I think like Franz, Paolo, and Wendell Carter is just better than a lot of the best three players for that like play-in kind of region. But I think the rest of their team is just still too squishy at this. But they need a guard to pop, and I think Indiana's closer right now.
Yeah, the Magic are in my play-in teams, by the way. I do feel a similar way. Same with the Pacers. My other two teams are the Atlanta Hawks and the Chicago Bulls. So my play-in teams are Indiana, Orlando, Atlanta, and Chicago. Any other?
I have Toronto over Chicago. I think the Bulls suck, and
that's fair. They do.
They're just you look at the roster and you're like, my God, like these same guys are largely back in key roles, and what? Is something going to be different? I don't think it is. Javon Carter, we love Javon, is not single-handedly going to bring, the good times back to Chicago Bulls basketball.
I like their ads. So. I have them in the play-in too. I think they got a little better. I think Toronto got worse.
Yeah, Toronto got a lot worse.
I still just think the Raptors are better. I will hold my hands up. I have never been someone who liked Zach LaVine's game or really thought all that much of it. Never really been crazy with the Rosens either. Like, they're just not a team that stylistically I look at and I'm like, yeah, that's going to be a good team. They may well prove me wrong.
I think Toronto
contract year Pat Williams after not getting an extension.
Yeah, I can kind of see why the Bulls didn't do that. I think Toronto has a better top three, but I think it's also like the worst three players you could put together in that tier of players and mesh, and that's why I have them lower.
Listen, it says a lot of what I think about the Bulls that I put a team with Dennis Schroeder as probably a starting point guard in ahead of them.
Yeah.
Well, that is what I think about the Bulls.
I also think Toronto's subject to maybe just blow it up in the middle of the season just on a win.
Definitely possible.
They're never going to.
I mean, same with Chicago as well.
Neither of them are ever going to do it. They're cowards.
Yeah, they are.
Their
master plan was Giannis, though.
Hey,
remember Toronto's master plan was Dame and Giannis. Turns out that's
cook
Milwaukee's master
plan. Up for 6 years from now. They could get back in the business here. I've got Miami, Atlanta, Orlando, and then I'm going to do the Bulls over the Raptors for 10.
Jordan?
We know Jordan's got the Nets.
I got the Nets. I got Indiana. I got the Hawks. I got the Bulls. I really wanted to put the Wizards in there, but
Jordan.
I thought about the Wizards. I don't
think they're. I think they're going to be an over.
Yeah,
I think they're going to be.
I think it'll be an over. They're an easy over, but I still think they'll probably be.
I think it's
worst team in the conference.
It speaks more of the teams that they leapfrog over, like the Pistons, Magic.
I thought about the Pistons,
Hornets. Cade is good. I don't know. They're really young. They're really young.
I know, but
I got burned bad last year.
I went higher than you, Adam.
You were saying
I know.
Wins.
I said 41 and 41.
I went first and probably swung very hard and maybe took some of the spotlight off Rohan going with it. But yeah, you're still with them.
Yeah, I'm still with them. I'm too much of a believer.
You didn't pick them for the play-in.
Yeah, I'm just too much of a believer in Cade to quit. I just can't quit the Pistons.
I quit the Pistons.
Okay.
I found it doable.
We already talked about Jordan's Brooklyn take, so I don't think we need to continue there. I'd say we're pretty much in lockstep in the Eastern Conference. Jordan, do you want us to make fun of the Nets more? Is that it?
I will have I'll have my cake someday.
Sure.
I'll go on record because I went with wins for what I thought all these teams. I think the Nets will win 30 games, and I think they'll be lucky to win 30 games.
Interesting.
Yep. Okay, let's go. Let's transition to the Western Conference now. And this is it's a bloodbath in the West. But my top six, again, we'll do the same thing. Stop me if you don't. Ty, do you have a top six list?
I'll have it.
Okay, I'll start off easy. Denver.
Yes.
The Lakers.
Yes.
Phoenix.
Yes.
Lakers is no for me.
Lakers is no for you. Okay, let's talk about it. Adam, why is Lakers not in your top 6?
Just I don't think they're that good. When you put them up against the other teams that are there, I think there's an element of they need to catch lightning in a bottle. They can. Like this could be kind of when it runs out for LeBron James in a superhuman LeBron James way, if it hasn't already.
I've been saying this since like 2017.
Yeah, but I really do think like I don't think he's the same guy already.
I'm never gonna believe it. I mean, yeah, he's not the same guy, but he's still like a top 20 player in the league.
I look at the roster and I don't think it's very good. And I think they've got a lot of very good teams around them. Like, I'm not saying they're going to be bad, but I think it's very easy in the West. And we've seen this like the past couple of years to have like quote unquote good teams, to have like 4 or 5 of them bunch up in 43, 44, 45, 46, 47 wins range, where it does not take a lot to be in playing spots. And I have the Lakers in the playing spots.
That's valid. I can see it happening. It's just like the West is so tough. Like making my top 6 cutoff was difficult.
Yeah.
Just because there are going to be a lot of teams bunched up sort of in the middle of the conference. Phoenix.
Yep.
The Kings.
Yep.
The Clippers.
Nope.
Okay. Why not? Jordan and Ty, you both had the Clippers out. Ty, let's start with you.
I'm fading the teams that are always hurt because I think it's hard for them to win. We talked about how bunched up the West is. It's not that I think at full strength the Clippers aren't a top 6 team. We've just literally no reason to think they will ever be there. Also, and this doesn't factor in a ton, but it does factor in the way this Harden trade thing is going. I don't think they want to leverage everything for this year, and I think that docks them some points too. If Terrence Mann, who is 27 years old and got 3rd billing on the Skechers NBA rebrand announcement after Julius Randle, is not included for James Harden, you're just not that serious about getting. And if you know, listen, I'm not a huge James Harden guy, but I think if you can trade Terrence Mann and like 1 pick to just drop James Harden on that team, you should probably do it. I don't think they're totally sold on how this is going. Also, I know this has been talked about a bit. Like Kawhi and PG are extension eligible. Haven't heard a lot about that. Haven't had those guys tweeting extended LA Clippers, Ballmer Dome.
LA wishes it was Milwaukee.
It does. So yeah, I'm just again, if they're fully healthy, not even like all year, if they're like Kawhi and PG both play 65 games, sure, they could be 4-3. I just don't see it happening.
I will say, even we've seen this Clippers team not do this and also still be a top 6 team. Like not be fully healthy and still be a top 6 team. It's just like, I don't know. I think I trust Ty Lue a lot in these situations. I trust the team around them. They just like, it may not be great, but they know how to play together.
I just think their cast is aging a lot as well.
It's hard to really say that Kawhi and PG are going to play 65 games together. It's that simple for me. They're going to be a tough out every year in the playoffs. That Ty Lue is a great coach. Who did they really add this year that could be like, okay, if things don't go to plan, which when you have stars that get hurt a lot, you have to factor that in terms of predictions.
All I'm saying is they've been this team for the last couple of years and still been a top 6 team. So.
Yeah. They're I don't know.
I just think
they're kind of stuck.
I think Batum is worse. I think Marcus Morris is worse. I think
Marcus Morris isn't playing.
Yeah, he's in the banishment zone, right?
That's.
Oh, they're not going to banish him.
And then forgetting someone else, Covington, also who's going to be like an answer there.
Yeah, that's right.
Bones Highland and Russ and the 2 forwards and Zubats, who's been like the 20th best center in the NBA for 5 years. I don't know.
Higher than 20th.
Is he?
Yeah, I'd say so.
There is an element to the Clippers that I just like. I have them in mind because I looked at all of that, and one, I think coaching, and I think for you guys, the coaching part of it is like, I think relevant there and will help them a lot. The other is
Speaking of extensions that have not come across the line just yet.
They find guys and they make it work and they pick up wins. Like, I'm kind of with you on, I'm not picking them. If it was like the ultimate healthy version of the Clippers, something which is complete fantasy, Like, they're right up there with the very best teams in the league. We've all given up on that. But I do think they find ways to win games. And again, if you get kind of mid-40s range, you're going to be right there. You're going to be in the thick of it in the West. And I think they can. They generally do and have for quite some time. They found in ways when they've had to deal with like losses of players where you're just like, the roster can't sustain it. They kind of stay afloat and they make themselves relevant. So I find it tough to kind of bet against the Clippers.
They were 6, but a half game out of like 9 last year, and they were 8 the year before that.
I mean, yeah, but it also means like they were like a half game out of 4th or something.
Yeah, fair.
My last top 16, by the way, was OKC.
Not on my list.
Not on mine.
I mean, it's like, it's really difficult for me to really do this. I mean, maybe I'm getting caught up in the hype here, but even though they didn't add a lot of like any really veterans of note or any players of note this offseason, besides technically Chet Holmgren.
Yeah, Chet's the guy.
This is a team who has their guy. They have their guy, their current first team All-NBA guard, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. They have good pieces around them. They have this this incoming talent in Chet Holmgren who just fits exactly what they needed, which is one thing they really struggled with last season was just size. They didn't have like anyone that could play that was above like 6'10". And now you just bring in this 7'2" freaking pterodactyl of a guy in Chet Holmgren and say, hey, that's our size. That's a pretty darn good answer to that question of who's going to be our size. Chet Holmgren is a good answer. Now, is he going to be like hold up as like an NBA center or whatever? That remains to be seen. I just think like they are a team that just fits together. They just got bullied last season on the boards. A lot of the reasons they like lost some close games was just like teams kept getting possession after possession after possession because they just couldn't secure the ball. Now, hopefully, you have a guy who can go out there and secure the ball for you. I mean, I know that's a lot riding on what's going to be a rookie.
No questions over that. Like height isn't the be all and end all for that.
No.
And I wouldn't be betting on Chet Holmgren like dominating the boards for the team.
I'm saying it helps.
Mm-hmm.
It might.
I'm saying it's not the solution, but it's definitely not contributing more to the problem. I'll say that. I just think this is a team that's ready to take the next step. We saw them in the play-in tournament last season. Why can't they do it again? I mean, and in my case, take a little bit of a step up because you see these guys get better as they get more experience in the NBA.
I don't think they have enough NBA players on the roster. I think they could. I think I would have loved to put them in the top 6. And instead of trying to get actively better this offseason, they took in bad contracts and drafted more guys. I don't like their depth. That's why I have them too low. And they're just still, even now, even though these guys have been playing for a little while now, they're still really young too.
Yeah, they are. But they've been playing together for a while now. And usually all it takes for a young team is just one season where it just clicks. I think that's this season.
Out of who Rohan didn't have, who some of us had, because some disagreements, I have the Warriors and the Timberwolves.
Minnesota!
I don't have the Wolves.
I don't have the Wolves anywhere.
I do.
You don't have them in the play-in?
Wow.
No.
What?
I think that's insane.
Whoa.
I don't have the Wolves in the play-in.
Wow.
I think this is going to be
who's in your...
This is going to be a moment of reckoning for the Minnesota Timberwolves franchise because they've just
How much reckoning do they need in their history, Rohan? All they've done is reckon.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. But they've just locked up every single like member of their rotation in like 4 or 5 year contracts for hundreds of millions of dollars, and it's still not going to pay off for them. And this is just a consequence. This is why I had prefaced this.
Sound like Papa John right now. There's a reckoning.
That's why I said it's a bloodbath in the West, because I was like, where do I put the Timberwolves? And then I'm like, I just can't put them in here.
We haven't even talked about Memphis.
Yeah,
Dallas.
Like the other four teams in my plan are Dallas, Memphis, the Warriors, and the Pelicans.
Well, actually, should we talk about Memphis now? I don't have Memphis in the plan. I don't. I have them completely on the outside.
I have them in the bottom of the plan.
But yeah, they scrape by in the play-in for me.
Like the team that we kind of have in our head as Memphis, obviously for various reasons. We have the time that Ja Morant is going to miss. Then we have the questions over whether he will be able to stop himself from missing more time as the season goes on. The Steven Adams news feels like a really big deal to start the season. So
bad for them.
It's bad.
Like I'm all the way out on them. I think all of the magic that they've worked, like Ty already alluded to, everyone being like all of their guys are good. You know what? I bet they all look a lot worse when they're without Ja Morant for a lot of the season, and they're without Steven Adams for the entire season. I think Steven Adams in particular, I know it's not like he's always been bulletproof health-wise, but
he
just has always felt...
Who's their other center?
No, I know. That's he feels like, though, a kind of even a personality glue, particularly with some other stuff going on in that locker room and organization.
They either have to start Xavier Tillman or Jaren Jackson Jr. at center, Jordan, to answer your question. So
I think it's Tillman, Jackson at the 4. Like,
yeah, I don't think you can play him at the 5 all year.
Who knows? There might be a signing, a trade incoming as well.
Yeah.
Dwight Howard.
Oh, God. And you're explaining why we have them on the outside looking in.
On the Timberwolves, I don't want... This might sound insane, but like obviously there is a lot of talent on that roster and it hasn't quite pieced together.
They're 5-0 in preseason.
I saw that. I think someone like Shake Milton could actually be really important.
Oh, you're just pandering to Ty.
How am I pandering to Ty? We all want to Shake Milton.
I love Shake.
He's a really good player, and when you've got like Mike Conley and what his health has been for many, many years and the kind of question marks around that. And you're like, is there a steady pair of hands here to round out this team alongside Anthony Edwards in the backcourt? I think you're very hard pushed to do better at that kind of price range, that kind of role than Shake Milton. I think they're going to be really good. I have them.
Their coach better be good.
I have them at 4. I have them at 4.
I have them at 8 or 9. 7, 8, or 9. The Wolves, that is. The Grizzlies, I think I have. We know Jordan loves the Wolves.
I know. Jordan's wow was so fake there.
I do think the Ant hype has been a little overblown this summer, but I think he's good. I think they have a lot of good players, even if the fit is kind of weird. I don't think it's that bad necessarily. And now that Ant has learned how to throw lobs to Rudy Gobert, that's the new story. There's always some like they talk about Rudy Gobert like he's like a little child. Every story about Rudy Gobert, it's like they had to figure it out. Yeah, I guess I can see why. But I think they'll be a little bit too good. I think I do have the Grizz missing out. I think for my 6th team that's a surprise, I have the Mavericks. And I hate myself for it. I don't like supporting what's going on over there in Dallas. I do just kind of think they have a nice group of role players. Kyrie and Luka make sense together, at least offensively. The center thing concerns me. I don't like that they're trying to start this rookie. I don't really get it. I don't get the vibes. But I think over the course of the season, they're going to have some centers.
Ton Maker-esque. What's going on?
I don't like what's going on with that. But I think, they have Kleba, they have Rashawn Holmes. I think they'll get by with centers. And I just think their top-end talent is really good. I think their role players are good enough. People say, they're thin. I think they are. But I think they're thin. The guys they have complement those top 2 guys really well.
I have them at 8 because of Jason Kidd. If it wasn't for Jason Kidd, they're probably honestly top 3. I wanted to give them more wins, and then I remembered they had Jason Kidd. Because even you look at their line, I think their line is set at generally around, well, I guess fluctuates depending on the book, but 43.5 to 45.5. 43.5 for a team with Luka Doncic is low. For a team with Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving,
that post Luka trade Giannis extension is going to hit different.
It really is.
That team should be so much better, and I cannot believe
they're Hawks West.
Their coach.
I think
they're more destructive.
I don't know who that's disrespectful to.
They're more destructive than the Hawks.
Both.
Jason Kidd.
That's why
In this economy, Jordan, Jason Kidd.
I think I have to do the whole 6. Denver first. I just think they're consistent. They deserve it. Even though they had kind of an underwhelming season, they were still first. I have Suns second. I think they're going to have weird stretches, but I just think they're really good. Lakers third. My thing with the Lakers, we talked about depth a little bit earlier today. I think they're pretty deep. I think they have a lot of pretty good NBA players when a lot of teams don't. Warriors fourth. Just Kuminga pops a little bit. They know what they're doing. The Clay thing is weird, but alas. Then I have
TP3.
Yeah, I don't even like that. I just think they're good. I think they're going to probably figure it out. Steph's really, really good. Kings fifth. I think the Kings are being a little disrespected lately. I don't think they're as good as they looked, but I think they're still going to win a good amount of games. And then, like I said, the Mavs.
Nuggets 1, Suns 2, Warriors 3, Timberwolves 4, Clippers 5, Kings 6. Sorry, back to you, Ty. Or Jordan. You give your 6?
Suns, Nuggets, Lakers, Warriors, Wolves, Kings.
Oh, we were pretty close there.
Mm-hmm.
Same top 4.
And again, my top 6 in no order: Denver, Lakers, Suns, Clippers, Kings, Thunder.
Thunder is the that's
Thunder. Thunder have, yeah.
Okay, so what were your playing teams? Again, for reference, mine were Dallas, Memphis, Golden State, and New Orleans.
Mine are Wolves, Clippers. Who did I sleep on before? I'm missing one that I slept on before. Wolves, Clippers, Grizzlies. Oh, Thunder. So the Pelicans miss out in mine. That's my big. One of those 11 has to miss the play-in. That's going to be pretty devastating.
It's crazy.
Team. I have it being the Pelicans for pretty obvious reasons, I think. They're already all hurt, and the season hasn't even started. And the guy who gets hurt the most is technically healthy right now. I just don't
Which is good. That's gonna lead to wins because he's just a devastating force. And it's like when he plays, this team is usually pretty darn good.
In those however many games. I don't even want to be negative. I won't even put a number out there. It's been very small numbers almost every year.
Yeah,
I'm keeping the fate. I'm going Pelicans, Mavs, Lakers, Thunder. Grizzlies missing out.
Thunder, Mavs, Grizz, Jazz.
Jazz.
Oh my God,
you love
Jordan.
these misfit toy teams.
Why?
I was there last year. There is no justification this year.
Why? Jordan, explain this coherently.
I love them. I love it. Sweet music.
That's not a legit, like a logical
You
argument.
do know this is the team and not the genre of music you're picking.
Oh, I still stand by my decision.
Tell us why.
I don't believe in the Pelicans. I think they got John Collins. John Collins is a good player.
He's all
John
right.
Collins is a good. He's all right.
I don't think this is a reason to pick them over the Pelicans.
Like
the Pelicans
Jordan
are better
has
players.
Jordan has these really coherent lists, 9 out of the 10 teams, and then there's one where it's just like,
What
also
is
this
happening?
team.
Yeah. Get ready, guys.
Have you
Yes, Rohan.
How can you put together a sentence that start like your reason for why they're going to win games is they got John Collins?
Because I've seen it in Atlanta.
Seen what? No, tell me. What have you seen?
That is a good question.
No. Yeah, what have you seen, Jordan?
I saw them play against the Bucks in the conference finals.
And cool. What did John Collins do in that situation?
He did not do well, but he got them there. He got
them there.
Yeah, he's the sole reason why.
I don't know if this is like a bit or not, but I genuinely want to know what this reaning is because it's just saying John Collins was in the conference finals is not a reason to pick the Utah fucking Jazz to make the play-in.
Got him. I'm just saying.
What have you got against the people of Utah?
That's a different podcast.
Don't answer.
Sound like Vernon Maxwell right now.
I don't think
Jordan didn't say anything. No, Ty, don't no, Jordan, we're waiting.
I think we will be waiting.
I like John Collins. I like Lowry Markkinen. I think they had a solid offseason. Jordan Clarkson. Can always depend on Jordan Clarkson.
For what exactly?
I don't care. That's the ultimate thing. I don't care. But I don't care about any of these teams in the West. I only care about the Milwaukee Bucks. That's what we're here for. That's where my bread is buttered.
Jordan, just to give you the equivalent of the Nets, I think the Jazz will win 29 games.
So they are. They are the same. They're similar. They're just like put together hastily teams that exist. And Jordan's like, hell yeah.
Hell yeah. I'm for the ride.
All right.
Jordan's all in on these teams that just traded their stars away.
Yeah, I love it. I love devastated teams.
You're like
it's a market inefficiency, guys.
Never mind.
I don't know. I don't know what to say to that. Do we have anything else we need to cover in this podcast?
No.
I think what Jordan said puts a perfect bow on it. We care a lot about the Milwaukee Bucks. And by the way, Giannis Antetokounmpo signed an extension. That happened around 2 hours ago now.
It feels longer. Honestly, it feels like that was last week. Huh?
Yeah, but it genuinely was like 2 hours ago. This is a long pod. Whoever is still here, we appreciate you. We really appreciate you listening, sticking with us. Hopefully you enjoyed this preview because we are poised for a big season here at GSPN, not just for the Bucks, but for everything.
Not all the pods will be this big, just so you know. Going forward.
This is just the mega season, win in 6 Euro step crossover. But we will have you covered all season long. I'm going to make this intro as long as possible, so Jordan just keeps, or outro as long as possible, so Jordan just keeps doing this. For anyone not watching on YouTube, just look at what Jordan's doing right now. But that's a good plug. Make sure you subscribe wherever you're listening to this podcast, whether that's you're listening to it on your podcast platform of choice or watching on YouTube, as I just mentioned. Make sure you're subscribed. All of our links are at gspn.info. You can find all of our podcasts, Substack, Discord link, entry link. The Bucks stock market is all there. And we appreciate all of you for sticking with us. And if you're new to the journey, welcome to the ride. It's going to be a fun season here at GSPN covering this Milwaukee Bucks season, and I can't wait to do it with all of you here on this call and everyone listening wherever that may be. So pod random, and we will talk to you next time.